During that difficult time in the hospital, he was always by my side to take care of me, and he made things much better. I was truly grateful because without his support, I probably wouldn't have made it. Now that I was on my bed in our home again, I felt so relieved. Josh had gone to work right after taking me home, so I was alone now.
Ow!
I accidentally stepped on something.
A toy wheel? Why is it here?
I thought to myself as I picked it up. Suddenly, there was a clicking sound behind the couch, and another toy wheel rolled over to me. This time, I was pretty sure that it came from under the couch. I stared at the corner, waiting for whatever was coming. Then, another wheel rolled to my feet, then another. This time, I was freaked out, not because of the wheels, but because of the blood-red streaks left behind them. I carefully bent down to take another look, feeling something terrifying yet familiar. It was too dark to see anything from this angle. Then I looked up, and from behind the couch appeared two shadows of children looking at me. Their eye sockets were black, and their contorted heads were bleeding, and I could hear them muttering something. A sudden headache hit me so hard that I screamed out loud and then fainted.
Isabel?
Josh jolted me awake. I was already in my bed.
Oh God, you're here.
I hugged Josh, and I told him about the toy wheel and the ghosts of two children.
Isabel, you've been lying here the whole time,
Josh said gently.
No way. I was in the living room, and I saw the wheels.
I explained.
Isabel, my dear, I've been here with you all night.
Josh denied all of the details in my story. He reassured me that I was just exhausted and told me to take my medicine regularly. After that, he went to pack his clothes for the upcoming business trip. I lay on the bed, but the things I saw earlier kept making me toss and turn.
Was it all an illusion?
Her memory hasn't returned.
Josh called from work to say he wouldn't be home tonight, reminding me to take my medicine on time. I turned on the television because the eerie silence made me nervous. There was breaking news about a murder.
The murderer her two children and has shown no sign of remorse.
I was busy opening the medicine bottle, so that was all I heard from the television. While taking the pills, I was startled by a strange noise. The pill in my hand fell on the floor and rolled to the sofa.
Damn it.
I didn't want to go near there.
But Josh wouldn't be happy if he knew I lost a pill.
So I groped under the chair. Suddenly my fingers touched something. I was startled and quickly pulled my hand out.
Oh God,
I exclaimed. Both of my hands were bruised and scratched. I was panic-stricken. What the hell is this? I tried vigorously to rub all of the marks off of my arm, but still they remained there. At that moment, the doorknob was twisting repeatedly, as if someone were trying to open the door. In a panic, I hid in the closet. The footsteps were getting closer and suddenly stopped right outside the door. I felt as though my heart were going to explode. Finally, that guy moved away, so I breathed a sigh of relief. Then the door swung open. It was Josh. He looked right at me with his angry, bloodshot eyes. Behind him were those two children with lifeless, hollow eyes and broken necks. I turned to the side, where I saw a picture frame. This thing might help. I used all my strength to slam it on his head. Then Josh fell to the ground, and his blood splattered on the floor. I was shocked to realize that the two children weren't there anymore. At this point, I noticed the photo in the broken frame. It was me and those two kids, but the man in the picture wasn't Josh.
What's going on right now?
I freaked out, then my head hurt again. Fragments of memories flooded back into my mind. After a while, a bunch of people dressed in white rushed over and surrounded me. Before I lost consciousness, I heard them shout,
An attack in Ward 1. The main doctor is injured.
I didn't know how long I slept, but when I woke up, I found myself in another room which was painted white. Josh?
When I was 10, I had a group of close friends. Besides me, there were 3 other kids named Flix, Jack, and Adrian. Remind you, I was a hyperactive child and often played tricks. I remember everything like it was yesterday. On the radio, a mentally ill patient was reported to be hiding in my area, and my parents didn't allow me to play outside. Yet, I was too excited for the upcoming exploration with my friends, so I didn't care. It was a large old house that had been abandoned for a long time. It was fenced with barbed wire, and the large gate was locked. However, there was a small hole in the back wall that was close to the grass, so kids like us could get through. When the group gathered at the place, we crept into the house and started our favorite game, hide and seek. This house is a perfect place to play this game because it's large and has many different rooms. Rock, paper, scissors. Rock, paper, scissors. I was the seeker. I blindfolded and counted while my friends ran away. 98, 99, 100. It didn't take me long to get Felix and Adrian, but it's not the same when it comes to Jack. You're hiding so well today, ain't you? As my patience was running out, I suddenly saw someone's shadow run past. It must be Jack. He knew I was coming, so he ran away to find another place to hide. I quickly followed him. It's so weird, because as soon as I thought I'm about to get him, I lost track of him. He kept disappearing and reappearing in another corner, which made me so tired. I finally gave up. Okay, I give up. Go back and start a new game. Hearing that, Jack stopped, but he just stood still. It didn't take me long to get Felix and Adrian, but it's not the same when it comes to Jack. Then all 3 had to go around the house together and find him. It wasn't until a while later that Jack came out from the master bedroom. He scratched his head and said, Sorry, I hid in the closet and fell asleep. It was too warm and dark in there. At that time, I just found out that the closet in the bedroom has a recessed drawer. If you don't pay attention, you won't see it. Don't lie, I gasped. For sure you have just chased me around. But Jack firmly denied. My friends also joined in teasing me, telling me not to scare them. But if the person I'm chasing isn't Jack, then who was it? Since my friends did not believe me, I insisted that they return to the house. I will prove that there's another kid in the house, I thought. So the next night, the group went to that abandoned house again. Today, I am still a seeker. I'm counting. 1, 2, 3, I said aloud. For some reason, the house seemed colder and darker than usual. This time, my voice was echoing through the walls. The footsteps of Jack, Adrian, and Flix gradually faded away and disappeared. 98, 99, 100. I left the living room and started my gameplay. 10 minutes, 15 minutes passed, but strangely, I couldn't find anyone. Is there any chance at all they left the house? I thought irritably. I was about to leave when I saw a familiar shoe at the door of the laundry room. Those are Adrian's shoes. You're hiding so well today, ain't you? As my patience was running out. Adrian, where are you? Get out of here! I'm not kidding! I yelled angrily. As soon as I finished speaking, I saw his arm waving at me in the dark corner of the hallway. I rushed over, but Adrian ran away again, so I lost track of him. I was panting on my hips when I saw another arm waving at me from the top of the stairs. It must be Jack! My whole body went crazy, and Jack also ran away immediately. I just saw him running up the stairs, so I followed him. Unlike my expectations, the second-floor hallway was empty. I was standing sideways when I saw Felix's hand wave at me from the bedroom window in the distance. Out of the bunch, Felix is the slowest, so I'm sure he couldn't run fast if I chased him. I slowly approached, trying not to make a sound, but it suddenly dawned on me that something wasn't right. This window was a bit too tall for Felix. Is he standing on a chair? I pressed my face against the window to peer inside. Suddenly, Felix's head popped out of the doorway, causing me to jump and fall to the ground. But his face was strange. His eyes blankly terrified, staring at me without blinking. I could hear my heart pounding. "Felix?" I called. Felix pulled his head and arm out of the window, and then I heard footsteps coming out. Oh my God, that's not Felix. Before my panicked eyes was a child. He has the same size, just like us, but with a wrinkled and yellowed face. His whole body was covered in blood, and he was holding a sharp knife in his hand. He laughed while walking towards me. "Oops, you found me. Now it's my turn to seek." Then he grinned at me and started counting. I froze in fear for a few seconds, then immediately got up and ran at full speed. I wanted to get out of this house as quickly as possible, but as soon as I reached the stairs, I began to hear the heavy footsteps chasing me. Suddenly, I remembered the secret closet that Jack had hidden before. I hurried into the bedroom and lay there holding my breath. I could hear the sounds of that monster scurrying everywhere looking for me. Finally, due to fatigue and lack of oxygen, I passed out. I woke up to see myself in the hospital. It turned out that my parents and the police had been looking for us all night, and that they had brought me to the hospital. But my friends weren't that lucky. They couldn't come back. Looks like they were all lured and murdered by the monster. Later on, I learned that he was the mental patient police were looking for. Since he was as short as a child, he got through the hole in the back wall and turned that into his temporary shelter. His favorite thing to do is play hide and seek with children and then kill them. The most terrible thing is, until now, the police still couldn't catch him.
My name is Vanessa. I'm a full-time employee at KFC restaurant. This wasn't my favorite job, but it was my main source of income, so I guessed I had no choice. My boyfriend and I lived in a shabby apartment. Most of the time, our dinner was the leftovers I brought from work. Things seemed to be fine, until one night. It was a Saturday night. The restaurant was incredibly crowded, so I had to work from the morning to late night. While I was cleaning the table, I noticed a new customer sitting at a table in the corner. He was frantically waving at me. I thought he wanted to order, so I went toward him. He turned out to be a mime artist, and he was grinning. "What would you like to order, sir?" I gave him the menu, but this guy just stared at me and started performing like we were in a play. Looking at his gestures, I guessed he wanted chicken and fries. Something about this guy made me feel uncomfortable. With that plus the fatigue, I couldn't keep polite manners anymore. "Here's your chicken." His smiling face distorted in an instant. He stood up and did some boxing moves. I was too tired to say anything back, and that seemed to make him angrier. He raised his hand to make a shooting gesture. "If you don't order anything, then just leave," I mumbled. His face darkened. He put his hands behind his back and slowly moved toward me. I thought that was an attack, but it turned out he was trying to stab me with an imaginary knife. I admitted that this silly trick startled me for a second, but it didn't make him less ridiculous at all. So I grabbed a random imaginary rock and threw it at that jerk. He frantically dodged and ran out of the door while clutching his head. That stupid reaction made me burst out laughing. Today was not too bad for me. When my boyfriend Mark came to pick me up, I told him about the mime guy. We laughed and talked all the way home. When we got to the building and walked to our apartment, I saw someone dressing as a mime artist in a hidden corner of the hallway.
You okay? Are you tired?
Mark handed me a chicken thigh while seeing me bewildered, probably the mime guy. Even so, I wouldn't be afraid of him because he was just a freak. For the next few days, I went to work in the morning and got the leftovers home at night as usual. It started snowing outside. After leaving work, I didn't see Mark waiting for me as usual. I tried to call him, but he didn't pick up the phone, so I got mad at him and walked home without him. As I reached home, I rushed to bed and fell asleep right away without even changing my clothes. The doorbell woke me up. I reluctantly went to the door to see through the peephole. I recognized Mark by his green beanie, but he was standing with his back to the door, maybe with something surprising. I opened the door, mumbling, "Did you forget the key again? Where have you been?" But that person wasn't Mark. That was the mime guy with the white painted face. I just looked at him in shock. He took off his hat, bowed to me, and grinned again. Then suddenly he saw something. He slipped past me and went straight to the KFC chicken bag on the table. What the hell is going on? He took the chicken out onto the table, then rubbed his hands together as if he were very hungry. He picked up a chicken thigh and began to devour it. Then suddenly he stopped chewing. His eyes lit up as if catching up with a new idea. He turned to me and made a gesture of enjoying the fries and ketchup. I couldn't keep watching this jerk burst into the house and eat Mark's food without permission. I jumped in and yanked the food out of his hand. "Get out! I called the cops!" His face darkened and he acted as if he pulled something out from behind his back. I still thought it was an imaginary knife, so I grabbed it. I could feel the pain and blood started to flow out. The sharp blade of the knife stabbed in my hand, but it wasn't enough for him. He kept stabbing me with the knife, but I managed to dodge. I ran out of the room, terrified, while that crazy man chased me right behind. I rushed into the elevator and frantically pressed the close button. The moment he was about to hit me again, the elevator closed and the knife fell right in front of me. I crouched in the corner, couldn't believe such terrible things had happened to me. When the police arrived, the only thing they found at the messy scene was a bloody knife with no fingerprints. A few days later, they found Mark's body buried in snow near the KFC restaurant. The mime's identity was never found. After that, I quit my job and never even dared to step into any KFC again. For many nights, I woke up startled and saw in the corner of the room, there was that freaky mime holding a bag of KFC chicken and smiling at me.
It's students from using this social media. I repeat.
What?
This is the most shocking announcement to Emma. As a mini-influencer, Instagram is not the only place where she shows off her body, but also her most profitable means of making money.
You know what? It's all because of Scarlett,
Emma says, surreptitiously surfing Instagram. Mina looks at Emma's old posts. Those are photos of her, Emma, and other hot Instagrammers bullying Scarlett for fun. A few weeks later, Scarlett disappeared. People say she moved to another school. But strangely enough, Emma and Mina's famous Instagram friends are also missing for unknown reasons.
But do you think those disappearances have anything to do with her?
Emma clicks her tongue. She doesn't care. Emma and Mina are both obsessed with Instagram. Wherever Emma goes, she takes pictures and updates them on her Instagram. That night, Emma sees Mina posting a picture of fried chicken, presumably sent by the advertising agency. So Emma calls Mina to ask about it. Mina is wearing the same pair of pajamas as her. Just then, Emma heard the bell ring. Mina said,
Maybe the company has sent another product. I'm gonna go get it.
A few minutes pass. Mina's not returning yet. Emma asks impatiently,
Hey, are you still there?
At that moment, the screen goes black and turns off. Maybe Mina's left the phone on dead again, Emma thinks. The next day, Mina doesn't come to school. A few days later, Emma calls her, but there's no response.
Did she go somewhere far away to shoot?
Emma is a little worried. After John's algebra class again, Emma pulls out her phone to surf Instagram. With her hand bored, she takes a picture of Mr. John's lecture and posts it without caption. Math sucks. A few minutes later, her picture got 100 likes. That night, Emma goes to bed at 10 o'clock as usual. These days, she's been seeing a pickup truck appear across from her bedroom. Feeling unsettled, Emma tries to look inside, but no one seems to be there. So she decides to go to sleep and can't stop thinking about Mina.
I'll go over her house tomorrow.
When Emma wakes up in the middle of the night, it has been really dark. Jesus, it's so cold in here. She looks out the window. It has been open already.
Did I forget to close the door?
Annoyed, Emma reached into the bedside lamp to find the switch. Just then, she realized there's something off. The electric switch feels warm and strangely soft. Only now does Emma squint her eyes in the dark. She gets startled when she realizes that there's someone standing near the bed, staring dead at her. Emma panics and quickly withdraws her hand. She's pinched by the rupeed cloth, slowly faints before making any sound. Revenge for Scarlet! Revenge for Scarlet! Revenge for Scarlet! Emma wakes up, finding herself in a room in the basement. Her head hurts like hell. She tries to regain her sanity. Gosh, a stench hits her nose, making her nauseous. She just realizes that all the walls are covered by her Instagram photos and her friends, including Mina. On the floor, there are piles of black, glossy bags tied to the top.
Am I in Scarlet's shelter?
Emma's shivered by her thought. At that moment, she hears the door open, and then the shadow of a man coming. God, that is Teacher John. He's still wearing his school uniform, his face and body covered in blood. Little rat, are you awake? Emma doesn't understand what's going on. She tries to get down until she's stopped by another pile of plastic bags. Go to hell, he says as he raises his sharp axe.
Please forgive me. I won't tell anyone.
Emma cries, panics, even though she doesn't understand anything. Emma plunges into the plastic bags and frantically hides. Teacher John, still holding the axe, slowly follows her. Teacher John strongly swings his axe down, but Emma dodges it. The plastic bag on the side pops open. Gosh, that's a leg on the fluid. Despite it being neatly cut, Emma still recognizes Mina's double pajamas. That's when she realized that she was lying on plastic bags of bodies. Emma's so scared and disgusted that she shivers. John's laughter rings out again. You just now realize that? Then the axe swings again, but this time she can no longer escape. Before she passes out, Emma sees Mr. John on his knees, holding a photo and crying. Scarlet, I'm sorry. I should have ended this sooner.
You to be my Valentine. I remember the look in your face, the happiness and excitement of the day we spent together, drained from your face like water running down a plug hole. You said no.
Heather, but you haven't thought about it, right?
But you were so sure.
I said no. I don't want to be your Valentine. To me, a relationship is just friends with benefits. Nothing more.
My love is burning for you. But just like that, you walked away into the crowd of lovers. I love you. I love you so much. Is it not enough for you? That night, after you left, I sat there and cried for hours. Didn't stop crying until I fainted in the middle of a luxurious restaurant. People look at me like I'm crazy. Don't blame them. Those who never understand what true love is. After the day I was rejected by you, I couldn't leave my bed. For how long, I don't remember. Maybe 2 weeks or more. I only went out when I'm exhausted from starving myself. But instead of going to the supermarket, I couldn't help but follow the familiar route leading to your apartment. Heather, do you know? When I saw you through the window, I felt more relieved than ever. Just as I felt the fire in me rekindle, I saw that man, the man you always hated. Who the hell he thought he was to touch you, hug you, and even put his dirty lips on your cheek. The moment you lower the window curtain, to be honest, you shut down my heart. Don't know how I got home, but you know what? When I came back to my apartment, everything I saw was the empty room and the cuts on my body. I didn't want to live anymore. I looked at your photos and decided to make another cut on my body. Blood drops, sting, and I thought, would things be different if I died? Can I change things, even just a little bit? And that night, with a picture of you in my hand, a plan gradually formed in my head. Heather Gray, has been a few days since that man didn't pick up your phone. Well, he's dead. It's not hard to find his house and where he hid the keys. I was already hiding in the closet and waiting for him to come back from your house. I have to tell you, it's really not a pleasant feeling to do, my Heather. I had to wait a long time, and when night fell and the man was fast asleep, I acted. With the knife that I intended to end my life with, I used to end his life. Just one neat cut across the neck. He was already awake, but I was reckless. He's not a decent man. Before he died, he frantically clung to me, scratching me so hard my skin bled. I watched him convulse, struggle, and suffocate in his own blood ocean. Before he grasped the last air, he still dared to ask me who I was. And I said, I'm your lover, Heather Gray. His blood splashed on me, got on all over my body, my face and hands. I felt disgusted, so I burned him and burned his house. Don't worry, police couldn't find me for now. I felt better after this, but still not completely. I was still missing something. It was you. I needed you. The plan would never be complete without you. You say, my love's burning for you. It's not enough. Well, I burned him for you. I burned you, and I burned us, because I know that's the only way. Heather Gray, I'm burning everything just for you. Now it's enough, right? Now we can be together, right? I'm gonna ask you again. Will you be my Valentine?
Hi everyone, it's Faith again. Today I want to show you guys this abandoned McDonald's restaurant. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's go!
This McDonald's was located in a small suburb, and it took Faith over an hour to find the way there. But it was worth all her efforts. She felt excited to be the first YouTuber to explore this place and was sure this video would break the record of her channel.
I heard that there was a massacre here, and the victims were McDonald's employees. The killer was never arrested.
Faith emphasized while filming the inside of the restaurant. There were neatly arranged tables and chairs on which many dust layers had thickened over time.
Look!
The old menu and some posters were still there on the board and also covered with dust and mold. Faith went to see the ice cream machines, the soda maker, and fryers. Suddenly, she saw a patch of mold on the floor behind the counter.
The police once found a body here. This place is a mess!
Faith panned the camera around to the kitchen.
I think we should move on.
Faith said to the camera and stepped over the mess on the floor toward the bathroom. As she was walking along the hallway, the flashlight went out. Yikes, she didn't change the battery. Faith stopped to shake the flashlight, hoping to brighten it up a little longer.
Oh, shoot!
Faith was startled, almost dropping the flash. Behind the window was a smiling Ronald Clown statue, whose eyes were wide open and very spooky. The statue looked old and odd.
Look, guys, this clown looks so real.
Realizing nothing so dangerous about this thing, she moved on to the other corners. The next destination was the toilet area, which was told to be where the murderer hid the corpses. Right after she walked to the door, the unpleasant musty smell wafted out. She gulped, hesitating whether to go in. Even though people said it was a rumor, it still frightened Faith.
I'm feeling pretty nervous, guys. Just a rumor anyway.
Faith turned the doorknob. Nothing special here.
Oh, just a regular bathroom.
Faith sighed, yet still wanted to check it. She went around with the camera on. It looked cleaner than the other rooms, and there was no mold, no blood, or sign of murder here.
Guys, the rumor is fake.
Faith left the toilet. This time, Faith focused on the floor she was standing on. There were a lot of stains, some messy piles of things, some dusty paintings and doodles.
God! These are really...
Faith was panic-stricken, then she fell to the ground, dropping the camera. On the ceiling was a dead body hanging. The corpse was wearing a McDonald's uniform. Her hand dangled in the air. Her face with 2 black eye sockets was covered in messy hair. Suddenly, her mouth started to move. Faith was so scared that her whole body froze. The brown liquid trickled down, emitting a foul stench throughout the air. Faith was panic-stricken, then she fell to the ground, dropping the camera. Rumors were true, and this place was really haunted. At this point, she didn't care about the video anymore. She quickly grabbed the camera and ran away from the abandoned restaurant without looking back. Fortunately, during her run, Faith found a police station. She quickly rushed in. When the police arrived, they quickly searched the entire restaurant but did not find the body. But the police continued to investigate based on Faith's video and traces at the scene. Faith offered the police some footage from her camera for investigation. As she watched the tape to the end, Faith shivered when she discovered the most terrible thing. There was no statue of Ronald the Clown in this abandoned McDonald's at all. That was Strangers. With just one click, you can meet anyone from anywhere, no matter who they are. But eventually, those ordinary video calls lost their charm. So I made a new prank. Voila! I put the makeup on with a little blood, some bruises, and weird costumes, then sat in front of the laptop and waited. When they got connected, on the screen would appear a girl in a white dress. The light would flash for a while and then turn off. After a few seconds, when the light suddenly was back on, a bloody face would jump in, which definitely would scare the piss out of them. I burst out laughing when my prank made a guy jump out of his skin. "Seriously, dude, this prank is on point," he said. Their reactions weren't too bad, so I thought I was good at my role, so I gave it a few updates. This time when I opened the video chat frame, there was a guy who was dressed as Pennywise the Clown. As normal, the screen suddenly went black. A scream of terror resounded through the air. A white face covered in blood appeared on the screen, startling the masked man. "Hey, you think this is funny?" The strange man pointed to the screen and said in a deep voice,
It's a prank. Take it easy, bro.
I frowned slightly. "A prank? Are you an airhead? Do you want to die or something?" He said and jumped toward the screen, and I swear at that moment, he scared the hell out of me. He gave me a snigger and then ended the call.
Up yours,
I murmured. After the first failure, I didn't call it a day, so I kept clicking the new chat box. However, the screen showed that man again.
What the hell?
I told myself. "You again." His rough voice came out. He was holding a cleaver in his hand. Something didn't feel right to me, so I clicked the new chat box without saying another word. This time was still that freaky man. "You think you can get away from me?" That voice again froze me in 1 second. "Wrong. I know who you are and where you live." That man was insane. His white eyes opened violently like a dead fish toward the camera. "I will find you and peel your skin and suck your blood and make your hair a wig. I will make you pay for your goddamn prank." While speaking, he pressed his face closer and closer to the screen. He laughed like crazy, which made me petrified. Needless to say, I immediately turned off Omegle and the laptop. The next day, I went to a Target shop for some groceries. On the way back, I had a feeling like someone was following me. But when I turned around, no one was there.
Weird,
I mumbled. All I could hear were the footsteps of myself and someone behind me. When I stopped, he stopped. When I went, he followed. Someone was following me. So I suddenly turned my head, but no one to be seen. It's just me and the long, empty road. The next day, I went out for groceries again. "Found you!" A familiar voice startled me. I turned around, and right behind was that man, the crazy guy with the Pennywise costume. No time to think. I immediately ran away, but he quickly caught up. I ran through the alleys, panicking when I heard those footsteps behind me. I hid behind the wall, trying to hold my heavy breath. Felt like my heart was about to explode out of my chest. Boom! That man suddenly, from nowhere, jumped in front of me. The eyes of his white face widened. His mouth opened with a stench and sharp teeth, as if he wanted to eat me alive. "It's time to pay for the prank!" He screamed while chasing after me. I couldn't die this way. I had to run for my life. My house was only a few steps away, and finally, I rushed into my house. Nearly exhausted, I used the last of my power to latch the lock inside. I ran up into my room, jumped into bed, and covered myself with a blanket. I never thought this would happen to me. My friend asked me why I was offline and if I still did my prank. I couldn't tell him how I was put in danger with my silly prank. Now that I was safe, I lay there and fell asleep. When I woke up, it was already dark. I crept out of bed, moved toward the window, and opened it. The man wasn't there. I guess he had finished his joke and given me up. So I opened Omegle again, and felt so relieved there was no sign of Pennywise the clown. Feeling hungry, I decided to go downstairs and find something to eat. Just then, I saw my sister opening the door to let someone in.
Robbie, say hi to our new neighbor. He's just moved in,
she said, and went to the kitchen to take a drink. The guest smiled at me and gave me a gift box. "For you." He was so kind, I said thanks as I received his gift box and unboxed it. But as soon as I did, my face turned pale and I dropped it on the floor. At that moment, I heard the door lock. Inside the box was a Pennywise mask. The friendly neighbor turned out to be the one I always dreaded. He wasn't friendly anymore. Instead, he grinned and said, "Gotcha!"
There was a rumor. No matter what you do, or what your purpose is, never stay at a Chuck E. Cheese till the 5th night. Because if you do, you will go crazy or even die for no reason.
Nonsense.
Stephen laughed at the story. He thought this rumor was stupid.
So, are you still gonna take the job?
The manager asked.
Yeah.
Stephen shrugged.
Remember, after checking the electrical system, you better go back to the security room. Don't stay outside for too long,
the manager said while handing the keys to Stephen before leaving. On the first day of work, Stephen tried to show himself as a responsible employee. The first duty was to check the electrical system. Chuck E. Cheese at night was so damn quiet. The dim light made it hard for Stephen to see things clearly, so he had to use the phone's flashlight.
Well, it's broken.
Stephen flicked on the broken light switch in the hallway. Then he decided to go to the electrical system room through the dining table area.
How did it get here?
Stephen was surprised to see the mascot of Charles standing in the corner of the room. He then pushed it to the backstage. After checking the electrical system, Stephen returned to the security room.
So boring.
He leaned on the chair, sipping hot coffee and looking at the security camera. Here came the very first nuisance.
What the hell?
Stephen noticed a guy in uniform sweeping the arcade.
Hey, it's late. Stop cleaning. You can do it tomorrow,
Stephen said over the microphone. But that man ignored his words.
Hey!
Stephen lost his patience.
Damn it!
He said angrily and decided to walk over to the arcade.
Did you hear what I said?
He mumbled. But when Stephen got there, the arcade was empty. There were only the game machines covered with dust in the corner.
Lucky for you.
Stephen went back to the monitoring room, thinking that the man had finished his job and left. This light work really bored Stephen. Even though he had finished a cup of coffee, he still couldn't resist the sleepiness. So Stephen closed his eyes and fell asleep quickly. The first 4 nights had passed peacefully. And soon came the 5th night. Stephen continued his boring job, walking around the store, checking the electrical system and locking all of the doors. Then he returned to the security room and turned on the cameras one by one. Each area appeared in sequence on the screen. The cleaning staff in the arcade, restroom, play area, all silent at night.
You don't need to walk around. Just stay in the security room tonight.
Stephen suddenly was reminded of the manager's words. But he had been on duty for 4 nights in a row and didn't see anything dangerous. Stephen thought while clicking to view the camera.
Ah! Oh, shoot!
Stephen was startled when he saw Charles's face covering the entire screen.
Who the hell did this?
Stephen angrily went to check the dressing room. But when he got there, there was no one in the dressing room. All animatronics were gone.
What the hell?
Stephen returned to the stage to check, but there was nothing either.
Hi, player! Are you ready for the fun night?
Stephen, startled, looked around.
Hey, this isn't funny at all,
he shouted.
Hey! It's time for the hunt night!
The room turned red with the deafening alarm bells ringing. Stephen covered his ears. The sound hurt his head so badly. He quickly ran towards the door but was stopped by Charles the mouse, which held a bloody axe in its hand. Stephen panicked and ran off to the other side. The dark corridor was lit by the dim flashlights. Stephen ran in panic. The heavy footsteps with the evil laughter of Charles and the other mascots were right behind him. Ellen the chicken threw the axe but missed him. He kept running away. Stephen was now hiding in the dressing room among the dusty and furry mascots. He tried to breathe softly so those horrible things wouldn't find him. Heavy footsteps resounded in the air along with eerie laughter. Those creatures were very close, and they were hunting Stephen. The animatronic's attention was drawn to the wardrobe, so they slowly approached. There was no one inside. Stephen managed to escape the dressing room before the robots found him. He panicked and ran towards the exit, but it was locked. Damn it! Stephen ran to the security room again, but no matter how hard he tried, the door wouldn't open.
No, please God, no!
Stephen muttered desperately. Stephen kept running away, but this time the robots blocked all the aisles. They came closer and closer. While panicked Stephen slowly stepped back, he suddenly hit something. That was Charles the mouse.
No!
The hunting night ended and a new day came. The mascots returned to the backstage, closing their eyes again as if nothing had happened.
It can get tiring to watch him go about his shenanigans in the pursuit of viral fame. Asking me to pick up things for him while he was traveling. To be honest, I was quite relieved since I didn't want to receive any more cheap view pranks from him. One evening I got home to find a big box waiting on his front porch. It was wrapped and glued very well along with the note, "Open the box right after you receive it." Damn it, I'm sure this is some kind of prank set up for me. I decided to drag the box over to my house to store it in the garage. I admit, I had trouble lifting the box on my own. It was really freaking heavy. I hadn't been to the garage for a long time, so I struggled for a while to pull it up. As I was trying my best to lift the box, I tripped over a ledge in the door. I lost my grip on the package and fell to the ground and heard a light crack inside. God, I hope I haven't broken anything important. That's okay. I can blame the carrier. That's what I thought. I dragged the box the rest of the way, setting it in the corner for days. Until a few days passed, there was a strong stench rose coming from the box from the garage that I couldn't ignore. He ordered raw meat to gradually roast, the mukbang or something. I covered my nose as I approached the box with a pair of scissors in my hands. I probably wouldn't even have needed them to open it, as it had become soggy enough at the bottom to poke through with a finger. I also prepared dozens of plastic bags to handle the pile of meat. But in the end, it turned out that I didn't need all of that. There was meat inside, not beef or pork, but human flesh. No, it's worse than that. That's my neighbor lying in there. Then his flesh began to rot and decompose. I rushed out of the garage, unable to hold back the nausea that gushes out of my rectum. My body softened with fear. I still managed to call the police. It was kind of hard not to suspect the man with the corpse in its garage. After all, thankfully they soon realized I wasn't involved. There was one piece of irrefutable evidence in my neighbor's own hands that proved my innocence: a vlogging camera. They showed me the footage only once. Turns out my neighbor took on the challenge to resend himself from the shipping facility to his home. The last video on camera read, "Hey, what's up guys? I think I'm in a truck right now. I can feel it moving." On the last entry, the box toppled over. He broke his neck, and that was it. The camera continued to record until the power went out. There's one thing that I didn't tell the police. Just right before the tumble that leads to his death, I heard the familiar screeching sound. It's the sound of my garage door, slowly being pulled up.
Dan has been a big fan of Chuck E. Cheese ever since he was a child. He often watched horror stories on YouTube about Chuck E. Cheese chain stores. Sometimes those stories were told to be based on a true story. And of course, he was always curious to find out if those stories were true.
It's nice to be here late at night. When the machines are down and families are gone, you can get a Chuck E. Cheese token.
Dan stood in front of Chuck E. Cheese restaurant, looking at his phone with anticipation. He looked around carefully while forming in his head a plan to sneak in there at 3 a.m. In the YouTube video he was watching, there was a reference to the Chuck E. Cheese token. The video owner claimed that he found it in the management room thanks to an animatronic. So the plan was set. He must find an animatronic. After a while, Dan got to a dark hallway. He suddenly felt like someone was watching from behind. Turning around, Dan was startled to see the Chuck E. Cheese mascot standing there. It looked old and very strange with its round, fat body and dirty fur. Thinking it was the restaurant's staff, Dan cautiously took a step back. The mascot also stepped toward him without saying a word.
So weird,
Dan thought as he squinted at the moving creature. His heart was beating fast, and his mind was trying to come up with as many excuses as possible, just in case they caught him. And then, the mascot suddenly reached out with its hand toward Dan. Dan reflexively put his hand forward in self-defense, but the mascot had no intention of harming. Dan looked closely into the mascot's hand to see a red hard card with the Chuck E. Cheese logo in there. His eyes widened in surprise.
Don't play at the machines until after dark. Although it's definitely more fun at night, when everybody is already sleeping at home at 3 a.m.
It was true. The rumor in the videos was true. Dan looked at the card in the mascot's hand and took it after a moment's hesitation. Then, with great joy, he thanked the mascot and quickly left. Now Dan was standing in the front of the entrance and trying to figure out how to get in. His watch pointed exactly at 3 o'clock. The door suddenly opened, and the mascot, Chuck E. Cheese, appeared and waved for Dan to come in. He was so jittery, but decided to step inside. The inside of the store was pitch black. All the gaming machines were off.
Now then, how to start?
But the mascot disappeared before Dan finished his sentence. Dan felt a little scared, but he couldn't quit here. He turned on the flashlight and continued to go deeper. After he took a few more steps, suddenly the screen at the stage lit up to guide the way. His heart was pumping so fast. Finally, it was time to lift the veil about all of this mysterious stuff. He followed the instructions and reached the corridor shortly thereafter. At the end of the hallway was a huge door with a magnetic lock. Dan took out the red card previously given to him by the mascot and swiped it. The door opened.
Yes!
When he stepped through the door, a horrible odor broke out. causing Dan to immediately cover his nose. It was a large room full of gaming machines like the store outside. Those machines looked old with patchy stains and rust, but seemed to work fine. A faint whisper from the darkness startled Dan. He followed the sound. The nearer he got, the clearer the sound was. And when the 4 mascots appeared in the dark corner of the room, Dan was completely petrified. They looked very monstrous and creepy. On the costumes crisscrossed with stitches, the fur was thick, dirty, and messy. There were patches of exposed skin.
Please, help us.
Oh my God! They were all humans! And those were not normal mascot costumes, but real human skin. Someone had sewn patches of skin and fur on those bodies to make them the living mascots.
Let's butter up the pizza with a special butter sauce.
Dan felt a quiver down his spine. When he turned around, Charles the mascot came with a sharp knife in his hand. Dan fortunately dodged the slashes of the knife, but still suffered an injury to his hand. The mascot kept swinging the knife. Panicked, Dan rushed towards the door with all his strength before getting stabbed with the knife. He rushed out of the restaurant, heading forward without looking back. Luckily, he reached the police station before losing consciousness from blood loss. According to Dan's testimony, the police came to investigate the scene. They found the secret chamber and the victims that were turned into mascots. They were the investors who planned to replace the restaurant with a big hotel. The owner was arrested after that. He was the one that wore the mascot. He loved the restaurant insanely. The owner decided to kidnap and punish the investors after they threatened to destroy his restaurant. And of course, he was also the mastermind of the horror story in Chuck E. Cheese 3 a.m. The manager gave Rosie a slap on her ear. "You rat!" I rushed into the room to intervene. I wanted to smack that guy, but something held me back. A pickpacker at Target was the only job I had, so I didn't want to mess it up just because of a conflict with this damn guy. So I took Rosie out of there and comforted her. But she just didn't say a word, and I could see the blood draining from her face. The crusty manager went out again. So I took this chance to gossip with Claire at the receptionist's table. We were chit-chatting about the manager. Not because we were mean, just he was really obnoxious and he deserved it. It was said that Rosie took the elevator, which really made the manager angry. The story of Rosie and the forbidden elevator kept floating in my head. After all, what did she do with the elevator? And how was that related to the manager's overreaction? I meant, was something terrible in that elevator?
I want to try it,
I suggested.
But if you get caught, you will get fired.
Claire resisted.
He's not here anyway. If he comes back, just give me a warning call, okay?
I said, then stepped toward the elevator. It was just a normal elevator. There was nothing strange at all. I was too busy focusing on every corner until the elevator door opened. All I saw was totally silent and dark space. I turned on the flash to see the way. The light switch didn't work. I swung the flashlight around the room, which looked like some basements I used to work in. But the floor was pretty dirty, and the Target crates were strewn all over. The floor smelled like a dead rat. It was disgusting here. I'd better leave this place. I quickly entered the elevator, but before pressing the button, I heard a strange noise. I frantically looked around, but other than the empty cardboard boxes, I couldn't see anything suspicious.
Maybe it was just my imagination.
I mumbled and sighed. That was the sobbing sound again. along with the sound of something falling to the ground. I really didn't miss here. My heart was about to explode out of my chest. What the hell was that? Was it a ghost? Was it what Rosie saw? I took a gulp and decided to discover the truth. So I followed the cry. It was very dark in the basement, so I had to walk carefully. The crying was on and off, but smaller than before. I patiently listened. I felt like I'd come very close. Claire's incoming phone call startled me, but I declined it because I couldn't pick up the phone right now. When the flashlight headed forward, I couldn't help but get terrified. A corpse in a Target uniform was lying on the floor. That corpse with a chain on the neck began to decompose, which explained the horrible smell that made me nauseous. Suddenly, a flash of thought made my heart skip a beat, my legs shaking even more. If the corpse was here, then whose cry was it? I was just raising the flash up when I was met with another horrifying scene. This was a girl. Her eyes were sewn up while her mouth was open with dried up blood around. She could only groan instead of speaking.
Oh my God! Rosie, is that you?
I was even more horrified when I recognized Rosie by her hair color and clothes. At this moment, there were sounds of footsteps coming. I had to find a place to hide. The flashlight flickered, getting closer and closer to Rosie, and then I saw a familiar face. That was the manager. When he stood right in front of Rosie, he grabbed her by the hair and slapped her face several times. I witnessed everything, yet could do nothing. My phone rang again, and I hurriedly turned it off. "Who's that?" The manager was startled. I heard him walking towards me. The closer he got, the faster my heart thumped. Without any time to think, I ran away. He immediately chased after me. Suddenly, I tripped over the box and fell. No, my time was running out. The elevator was just 5 steps from me. I used the very last of my strength to push myself into it. But the manager was right behind me and was about to step into the cabin. I shakingly pressed the close button, and before the elevator door really closed, I could still see his disgusting, evil face. I ran to Claire, and she became more and more worried when she saw my terrified face.
We have to get out of here. I'll explain later.
We called the police to arrest the manager. Rosie was rescued while she was in a very bad condition. Her tongue was cut off, so she couldn't speak anymore. The store was forced to close right after the scandal. Now, every time I pass the sealed Target shop, all the horrible memories in my mind come rushing back, which never stopped making me shiver.
Police have recorded a total of 4 brutal murders in the past week. The common pattern in those cases is that the victim's head was cut off and brought away. Police are expanding their inquiry.
Mommy, can you stay home today?
Those words raised in Avery a sense of guilt for making her own daughter worry. She kissed the kid on the forehead.
Be good. Stay at home and take care of your sister. I'll come home early today, I promise.
Then the mother left home and began her workday. Avery was an Uber driver. That was a busy day, and she had to spend almost all day on the road. Very soon it was getting dark. There was a shortcut, a small path through the forest, which Avery always took to get home faster. When she just passed through the long tunnel, the Uber application informed her about a booking customer. But anyhow, she didn't accept this ride because she promised her little daughter to get home as soon as possible. It was past 11. Avery pressed the gas pedal. Lowering the window, she enjoyed the cool breeze on her face. When she just passed through the long tunnel, the Uber application informed her about a booking customer. In a moment of carelessness, Avery was startled when someone jumped out of nowhere in the middle of the road. She instinctively hit on the brake. The car lost control, and everything turned upside down.
Oh God. Did I hit someone?
Avery was frightened. She tried to strain her eyes to see clearly, but there was no one on the street. Suddenly, she saw an arm from the outside reaching into the car and grabbing her shirt. The bloody hand was shaking so badly. Then a man showed up. It was the man who jumped out into the middle of the road.
Let me in.
Gosh, his whole body was covered in blood. His clothes were like rags. Perhaps this was because Avery hit him with the car. She quickly unlocked the car door to let the man in. In just a few more miles, Avery's car suddenly shook violently and she had to stop. The passenger also got down from the car to see the problem.
A nail? For God's sake. Doggone it.
Avery's tires, which had been pierced with some sharp spikes, were now flattened. The man standing nearby came up to her and said,
Well, if you don't mind, I have a toolbox with me. It's in the back seat.
Avery rejoiced slightly. She told the man to check the condition of the tires while she got into the back seat to get the toolbox.
Hope he has pliers,
she told herself while opening his bag. But the moment Avery opened it, she was shocked to look at what was inside. There was a bunch of nails whose shape was exactly the same as the ones embedded in her tires now. Next to it was a bloody axe and a saw blade.
What took you so long?
Startled, Avery quickly closed the bag. At the same time, the man got into the front seat and closed the door. She tried to act normal.
I think I should get out of the car and wait for the rescue squad to come.
Avery was surreptitiously dialing 911 and managed to open the car door. The man looked at her, smiling expectantly. That's when she realized the car door was locked. That creepy man, who had been watching Avery in the rear-view mirror, suddenly leaned backward and asked,
Did you really call the rescue team?
Avery was startled when she realized the man's face was very close, perhaps inches away from hers. There was something so monstrous in his smile. His wide eyes and jagged yellow teeth made her nauseous.
What do you want? Get out of my car now!
Avery tried to sound calm. The man gasped for breath and said,
But it's dangerous outside. Don't make me go there. I'm scared.
Then he laughed like crazy while raising his hand forward to strangle Avery. Just then, a dispatcher picked up the phone. Avery was feverish and accidentally touched the speakerphone button.
It's 911. What's your emergency?
The man was startled when he heard the voice on the phone. When he was caught off guard for a second, Avery pulled a hammer from the toolbox to defend herself. She used all her strength to smack him on the head, but the hit wasn't strong enough.
Well.
Avery swung the hammer wildly but was soon restrained. The murderer grabbed her hand and snatched the hammer, which made her fall backward. She fell on the toolbox, and all the things inside fell out. It turned out to be a human head, a horrifying scene Avery would probably never forget for the rest of her life. The blood that oozed from it soaked the bag, dirty and pungent. Suddenly, Avery remembered the breaking news earlier.
So, maybe you found my widow secret. But I don't want you to see it at all. So what should I do now? Tell me.
Please, I'll keep my mouth shut. I swear to God, please let me go.
Avery got even more petrified when she thought about her children. But that cold-blooded killer didn't heed her pleas. He laughed while approaching his prey. And then, hammer blows came crashing down. Her painful scream, overwhelmed by the sound of hammering, tore up the still air in the deep forest. Blood splattered everywhere, and the madman was extremely amused. He was overcome with pleasure watching his victim lying in blood. Avery fainted, tears streaming down her face as she thought of her daughter.
My name is Roy, and this story happened to me many years ago. It was a December night. Mr. Hudson, my neighbor, had to go to work, so he hired me as the babysitter. Since I needed extra income, I agreed. When I got there, Mr. Hudson was about to leave. He also gave me a little rundown on what to do with Riley, his 5-year-old daughter. Riley turned out to be very sensitive. Lately, she had been having nightmares and was so scared that she even screamed in her sleep.
Well, I bought her a new Kissy Missy at first. Riley loved it so much. A few days passed and she changed. Every time she sees it, she screams.
Also, Mr. Hudson told me to stay in his room after tucking Riley so that she could feel at ease. Yes, sure I can do that, I said, and waved goodbye to him. Around 10 o'clock, I took Riley up to the bedroom and was immediately blown away. When I heard about the Kissy Missy stuffed animal, I didn't think it was this big. As I was tucking Riley in, she seemed scared and still wouldn't close her eyes. Sam, I'm scared. Kissy Missy keeps staring at me, she said, like this thing can make its own decision. That's what I thought. But I still need to find a way to comfort her. It's all in your head, Riley. Kissy Missy is so cute. And besides, well, look how soft its fur is. She insisted on not letting me go. Okay, what about I'll take Kissy Missy to the other room and let your door open. Then whatever happens, you just scream and I'll be there. The move worked. Riley slowly closed her eyes. I made sure she's asleep, then leaving the door wide open and dragging Kissy Missy to the next room. Jesus, how much is this thing worth? It's way heavier than I thought. It took me a while to drag it to Mr. Hudson's room. I sighed in frustration and went to bed to watch some TV. For some reason, Kissy Missy gave me shivers. Was it looking at me like that before? No wonder Riley has been having nightmares. But then, I laughed to myself because of my rich imagination. I wake up in the middle of the night. The TV was still on. I turned to the corner of the room to find out that Kissy Missy was no longer there. Wow! Riley was unexpected, huh? I decided to go downstairs and make a sandwich Riley's door was closed. She must have sneaked into my room to get her kissy-missy while I slept. I headed to the kitchen and gave my phone a quick check. A few missed calls, all from Mr. Hudson's number. Even though it was 12 o'clock at night, I still called back to make sure everything was okay.
Oh, nothing's urgent. I just called to check.
I told him everything was great and he didn't need to worry. Then, Mr. Hudson needs to get back to work. Before ending the call, I joked to him, Riley literally fell in love with Kissy Missy again, Mr. Hudson. It took me a lot to drag it to your room, but Riley sneaked in to take it back. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. But somehow, I knew my neighbor hadn't hung up yet. Seeming to realize something, his voice turned strangely urgent.
Get Riley now. Get her, and you both get out of that house.
I couldn't digest it.
Riley never ever wakes up in the middle of the night. Never.
Just then I heard screams. The fear spiked. I dropped my phone and rushed upstairs, but it was too late. The window was wide open, and Riley was nowhere to be found. Kissy Missy was collapsing right next to the bed, fur sticking out of its back, revealing an empty space inside.
Being a student in a big city is so difficult. After all, I decided to move to a remote rural area. To earn money, I applied for a job at Wendy's. The interview was smooth. The job didn't require much since there weren't many people in the area. While taking me around the restaurant, Mr. Royce, the manager, suddenly said, one more thing. Do not ever come near the kitchen. I acknowledged that at the fast food restaurant, the kitchen was where they keep the secret recipe, so I totally agreed. Beside Mr. Royce, there was an employee named Lynn and a chef that I barely knew his name. Lynn wore the uniform, makeup, and a wig that looked just like Wendy. We didn't talk much. Lynn was odd. She often looked around and didn't make any sound. Moreover, the next day, after bringing food for the customer, she threw up right there on her feet, and she was slapped right at the spot by the manager. The next afternoon, I went to work late. When I came in, Lynn was leaning out, peeping at the room inside. Isn't that the kitchen? I thought. Lynn, what are you doing? She was startled as she heard my voice. Stained cups and bowls on her hands were dropped, making a loud sound. Jesus, are you okay? I felt so bad that I ran to her to help. But strangely, Lynn was so frightened that she couldn't control her body. She was shaking like she had a seizure. Then I pointed somewhere. I turned around and saw Mr. Royce. Hi, boss. Lynn doesn't seem so well, so I'm gonna help her clean up right now. Yet the manager got mad. He held her hair and shouted, "This fat rat! How dare you!" Lynn was shaking even worse. Her body was shivering, foaming at her mouth.
No, no, no!
As a witness, I didn't know what to do. At that moment, Royce turned to me and said, "You are late today, so your salary will be deducted." After that, I was sent home. The day after, I went to work but didn't see Lynn. Instead, Mr. Royce was working. And days after that, Lynn was nowhere to be seen. So I thought she was fired. It was a Saturday night. I finished my shift at 11 p.m. There was no one in Wendy's store. I guessed Royce and the chef were in the kitchen. When I was about to lock the door, I couldn't find my key. Jesus, Royce is not going to go easy on me. There was no choice for me. I had to come into the kitchen for the spare key. Mr. Royce? How strange. The kitchen was empty. There was only a boiling bone broth on the stove. I came in and found a half-opened door at the corner. Curiosity got the better of me, so I stepped in. Jesus. In front of me, there was a stair to the basement. I had no idea that Wendy's had such a basement, I uttered. Then I followed the dark stairs and tried to step as gently as I could. When there were a few steps left, I started hearing people talking. Boss, the meat is so fat lately. It was the voice of the chef. Then Roy said, resources are rare these days, so stop complaining. It turned out to be a slaughter place. Right at that moment, the sound of a knife cutting hard on the table resounded, causing the floor to shake. The pig must be very big, which cost the chef so much strength, I thought. Then I felt something roll to my feet. Squinting to see clearly, I picked it up and found it was an eyeball with blood on it. That's horrible. I suddenly stepped back and accidentally made a sound. Who's that? It was Royce's voice. I'll check it. Then the chef's. I was freaked out. I tried to find a place to hide. As I turned around, I luckily found cold storage of meat. I quickly came in. In the dark, I felt relief because these messes might be a good place to hide. So I ducked into a corner when I heard the chef footsteps getting closer and closer. I held my breath and waited. The place where I hid was extremely cramped. There was meat hanging above and below. Boo! I was startled and sat down on the floor. My hand touched the meat and it felt so sticky. That was when I realized that the things around me weren't meat, but looked like human bodies. Gosh, I was not a stranger, but Lynn. Oh no, it was her upper part. The lower part was cut down as the blood dried, and she was all cold. I tried not to scream. I just sat there, next to Lynn's dead body, until I could no longer hear the chef's steps. Because it was too cold, I crawled out. When I thought I would reach the door, suddenly I was blocked by a huge body. Gotcha! Right at that moment, all the lights turned on. The chef with the knife in his hand, standing right in front of me. I could see around by the light in the room. There was not only pork, but there were also human corpses hanging around. The chef slowly raised his knife and prepared to slash it. As everything got blurred, I fainted away. I didn't know how long, but when I woke up, I felt like I was flying. My feet didn't touch the ground, and my whole body ached. At that moment, Mr. Royce and the chef appeared. That's when I realized I was being hung up, but I couldn't scream anymore because I lost all feeling from the cold.
I lived in a dormitory. My roommate was Adam. He is the same age as me, but a head taller than me. I'm a skinny, nerdy college student who likes to spend time online and playing games alone. As for Adam, although he always wore a hoodie, I know for sure behind that shirt was a tall, muscular body. He must have been the desire of many girlfriends. Despite his appearance, Adam is quite taciturn and quiet. We don't talk to each other much. I also respect his privacy, so I don't often ask questions. Like me, Adam usually stays in his room all weekend. He will be out of the house only on Friday night between 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. So, it was a Friday night. As usual, when Adam went out, I opened Omegle to meet and talk to strangers. You know, guys like me don't usually get the chance to make friends in real life. After skipping through a few boring chat frames, I stopped. I came across a familiar scene. The structure, painted walls, are exactly the same as the dorm room I was in. However, strangely, in the middle of that room was a table and a chair. He didn't say no, quietly eating the bowl of soup in front of him. Hello, late dinner, huh? No one replied. It was only then that I noticed his odd appearance. Why on earth did he have to eat haggardly like that? He seems to be very hungry. but at the same time, so reluctantly. And if I'm not mistaken, I saw his tears rolling down his cheeks. Weird, I thought. At that moment, another figure appeared. In that dark space, I could only see the person's arm outstretched. He has an axe tattooed above his wrist. The arm kept stroking the boy, but this only made him shiver even more. This must be a joke. I left a message. Freaks, you guys are boring, and left the chat room. The phone fell to the ground, startling me. Looking up at the clock, it was already 2 a.m. I've been asleep since when? I don't even know. Adam was back. Suddenly I thought of the guy eating the soup. Curiosity aroused. I rummaged up and opened my computer to see if the show had ended. Jesus, what happened? On the other side of the screen was a horrifying scene. The boy just now had his face down on the table. The bowl of soup spilled out. A slimy liquid spilled all over the table. What? I glued my eyes on the screen. It's the weirdest soup I've ever seen. On the table was a red mixture. Crammed in the middle was what looked like minced meat. My body shook with fear. I panicked. My whole body, including the chair, fell backwards. It's disgusting. What the hell? Hearing the loud noise, Adam seemed to have woken up and ran to me to ask. I was still breathing heavily, unable to speak, only trembling to point at the screen. That guy, he seems dead. Adam helped me sit back on the bed. Okay, calm down. Tell me everything you know. Wait. This is the first time I've seen Adam not wearing a hoodie. And on top of his wrist is the tattoo of an axe.
While I was at the Disneyland entrance waiting for my shift, I saw Bruno, the coworker who just left from the previous shift. He showed me a trending video of Mickey Mouse. "It is said anyone who sees this video will be cursed," Bruno said. Why did people want to self-harm after watching it? I was pretty sure it was just a made-up story from Creepypasta. It was the message from the manager. He assigned me to clean up at Toontown, specifically Mickey's basement. I said goodbye to Bruno and headed straight to Mickey's house. My job was cleaning all of Mickey's basement, including 2 men's and women's restrooms, a small gym and break room. Since there was no one here, the place became creepier than usual. I started my night shift by cleaning the men's bathroom floor. Jesus, these footprints won't go away. I pushed it harder and harder. After a while, those footprints finally faded. It's strange, what were the children playing with to be so dirty? But when I looked closer, they appeared to be too large to be a child's footprint. I continued my shift and headed to the women's restroom. To make the work less boring, I was cleaning the house while humming a melody. A few minutes passed and suddenly I heard a strange noise. Looked like it came from the men's restroom. I stopped and listened carefully, but it fell silent again. Jesus, I must have gotten paranoid from watching that Mickey video. After that, I quickly moved my stuff to the gym to clean up, and I heard that strange sound, but this time it came from the women's restroom. So I called out, "Hello? Is anyone here?" Strangely enough, the sound didn't stop, but became louder and louder. My heart beat faster with each step. As soon as I felt that person was about to burst into the room, the footsteps became quieter. What caught my eye was the toolbox in the middle of the floor. Oh, was the box here just now? While thinking, I pulled the crate towards the corner of the room. As I was at the door to take a look around, I suddenly felt a chill on my back. I turned, and immediately my whole body froze. Someone just passed me. From this angle, I could only see the back, but this person seemed to be wearing a Mickey mascot. Is it Staff? I called out, Hey, who's that?" but that person still staggered forward. Could it be the front shift worker? I asked again. "Bruno, is that you?" This time I got a response. "Yeah, I forgot something," he said as Mickey's shadow disappeared at the end of the corridor. About half an hour later, I finished cleaning the restroom and was ready to leave. When passing the men's restroom, I suddenly saw that the toolbox dragged to the middle of the room again. How strange. Bruno? You still here?" But no one answered. I looked at the time. It was 3 a.m., 2 more hours until the shift's end. I didn't want to be caught by camera, so I went to a room in the restroom to sleep a bit. Time passed by. As I was leaning on the toilet and dozing off to sleep, I suddenly heard a soft sound. The noise came from the next room. Jesus, I forgot to check the other rooms, I thought as I slowly bent to peer into the next room. Oh my god, there were feet. They're crazily big in size. While I was standing still, those feet slowly turned towards me. Something wet fell on my head. I looked up and froze. That was the head of Mickey's mascot. His eyes stared right straight at me. Gosh, you scared me to death. You still forget something? As soon as I stopped, the Mickey mascot made a high-pitched laugh.
I forgot this thing!
He said, and slowly raised a sharp knife, tinged with a bright red, like the color of blood. Suddenly, Mickey's head dropped. I rushed out of the bathroom and rushed to the door. God, the door was locked. I twisted like crazy, but couldn't open the door. With no other choice, I returned to the crate in the corner of the room. At this moment, suddenly the door from the next room opened, and a man in the Mickey suit stepped out, knife in his hand, walking slowly towards me. I have to hurry, I mumbled as I kept looking for something to open the door. Mickey was still laughing like crazy and rushed to me like lightning. Behind me was the wall, so I had nowhere else to hide. He slowly raised his knife and prepared to swing it down. Fortunately, if it weren't for the toolbox, I would probably have died at his hands. As soon as I saw the axe, I quickly grabbed it and rushed to the door. Once, twice, 3 times. Finally, the door opened. I closed it just as the madman got out. I quickly blocked the door with the axe and left that goddamn Mickey basement behind to run to the police station. When the police arrived, the room was all empty. No trace of the Mickey mascot was found at the scene, and strangely enough, they couldn't get in touch with Bruno or even the manager who assigned me to clean in this shift. It happened in summer several years ago. That day, I discovered a painting titled Mrs. Nightfriend while cleaning Lily's room. It was about Lily and a woman with extremely scary bloodshot eyes looked, surrounded by red, orange, yellow spots that looked like fire. The problem was that I had never heard of any friends from her before. I asked Lily about her new friend right at dinner. Lily happily showed me the picture. I asked her name.
Mrs. Knight, look here!
She looked over and pointed to the name in the corner of the picture. I asked her about the red eyes.
Because they were burned, Mommy.
Lily said innocently as she finished her dinner. The answer creeped me out, but I just simply thought that she had a good imagination.
So I can meet your friends?
I looked at her tenderly. She suddenly froze. Her face turned darkened. She stared at me with her big, beautiful eyes.
Do you really want to see her?
My heart suddenly pounded, and I nodded slightly.
Let me ask her first.
She finished her words and left the dining room. Since then, I felt the paranormal things happening in the house. For example, the sound of footsteps walking upstairs, or the crunching from the kitchen. But every time I went to check, I just found nothing. I thought it was some strange animal entering because there were actually many trees and bushes out surrounding our house. That night, I brought some fruit to Lily's room. Then I heard her whispering to someone. There was a loud bang when I was about to knock on the door. I panicked and quickly turned the doorknob, but it was locked from the inside. I banged on the door, panicking, calling out,
Lily, what's happening? Open the door!
After a while, Lily opened the door. I looked inside but didn't find anything suspicious. Lily just stood there, bewildered, and looked at me. I asked her what happened. She said with a frown,
Mrs. Knight, she doesn't want to see you, Mom.
Then her gaze gradually shifted in another direction. Looking at her dirty hands, I guessed that she was just trying to distract me from punishing her. I sighed, took her to the bathroom to wash her hand and face, while warning her from playing with dirt before going to bed ever again. I finished taking out the trash, then came inside. That was when I saw Lily standing on the edge of the stairs. What was weird was that Lily was blindfolded, and she looked like she was going to fall. I worriedly yelled, which startled her. She took off her blindfold and smiled at me. She told me that she was playing hide and seek with Mrs. Knight, and asked me to join her, and promised to let me meet her mysterious friend.
Now we hide, and you seek, okay?
She said, handing me the blindfold. I put it on, then counted from 1 to 10. The sound of pounding footsteps faded away. After that, I left my spot, starting to find her. I guessed that she was hiding in the closet, so I went there to find her. I called her name, then I heard applause from her bedroom as a response. I followed the wall, opened the door, and walked in.
Boo!
I opened the closet, but it was completely silent inside. The sound of clapping by my ears made me jump. My heart suddenly beat so fast.
Mommy?
Lily called me. I quickly took off my blindfold and ran towards her.
Why don't you go find me?
She looked at me reproachfully.
I thought you were hiding in the closet.
I explained.
So you found Mrs. Knight?
She seemed surprised. I was a little startled, but before I could react, she pulled me and said,
This time, Mrs. Knight will find. We must hide carefully.
After she finished talking, she giggled, and while counting, she pulled me out of the room. I hid in the kitchen and waited anxiously, but still no one came looking for me, only the sound of footsteps outside the living room. It was Lily's voiceless scream. I quickly jumped out. The scene in front of my eyes terrified me. A tall person was carrying Lily on her shoulder. I realized it was Mrs. Knight in Lily's picture. My daughter screamed and struggled. I panicked. Without thinking much, I pushed the woman down. Only then did I see her face. I was terrified. Her face was full of crimson scars that huddled together. Especially her eyes were red, and her lips were mixed with the scars, revealing only a wheezing hole. She went crazy, pushed me down to the floor, and rushed to strangle me. Lily stood beside her, begging, but she squeezed even tighter. I struggled and grabbed a hard object on the floor, quickly hitting the woman on her head. When she stepped back, I hugged Lily and ran into the small storage room, locking the door. The woman screamed and banged on the door repeatedly. I was afraid to hug Lily in my arms, trembling to dial 911. The woman couldn't open the door, so she left. Before I could breathe in relief, I smelled gasoline, then burning. Smoke began to pour in from the outside. Soon the room was filled with smoke. I tried to hug Lily tightly, hoping she wouldn't breathe in the smoke. I could feel myself fading away. At the same time, I heard police sirens outside. Mrs. Knight was arrested while holding a gas can. Turns out it was a man with a mental illness. He used to be the owner of the house. Mrs. Knight had a 5-year-old child and loved her very much, but after discovering that she wasn't his, but his wife and her lover, he went mad and set the house on fire. The fire killed his wife and daughter and burned his entire face. According to the police, he had been living in our house for a month. I shuddered to discover that it was around the time when we moved in. Then I recalled the memory of the woman, the sparks of fire in Lily's painting, and the name Mrs. Nightfriend, and I suddenly realized that day was the same day when he set the fire a few years.
And Nick met each other at the Camping Lovers Club. Since then, they have always been together. At the end of October 2021, the couple went camping together in a remote and out-of-the-way area to celebrate Jack's new RV.
Are you sure you know the road?
It's been 3 days on the road, but Lucy and Jack haven't arrived at the destination yet. The place is deep in the woods and was barely discovered, so it's quite hard to find the path. "Yeah," Jack said in a certain voice. According to his plan, they would be there in 30 minutes. The luxuriant trees spread out almost to the middle of the lane. It's so dark that it's even harder for Jack to see. Suddenly, both Jack, Lucy, and their belongings go crazy. They've just crashed something very big. Jack quickly pushes the brake. The wheels slip a long way.
What the hell was that?
Lucy screams while Jack sweated with fear. It looks like a human body. Lucy freezes when she hears from Jack. After a while, they decide to take the flashlight to check.
Oh, shoot.
It seems like Jack was right. Under the wheels, they find a long bloodstain. Jack and Lucy follow that bloodstain. 1 meter, then 2 meters. Their hearts bounce faster as they step closer. It's so close now. "I think it's alive," Jack said. At that moment, the body suddenly jumps and scares the couple startled. Lucy heaves a sigh of relief when she finds that the body is a deer, and so does Jack. For a moment, he has thought he would go to jail.
Wait, this deer looks so strange.
Lucy sits down to see the deer better. It seems to be heavily injured before the accident. Its body is covered with blood, and the guts are coming out. The accident can't do that to a deer. But Jack doesn't care. He hastily says, "Let's get back to the van. I can feel that we are almost there." Lucy listens to Jack, gets back to the van, and they start the van. After moving for a while, they suddenly see a strange man who is asking for a ride. Jack slows down the vehicle so that Lucy can see the man more clearly. Gosh, his face is so disgusting. His clothes are like filthy rags. He doesn't even wear slippers. Lucy doesn't feel so well, so she shouts,
"Go, go, go!"
Finally, Jack doesn't stop the vehicle, as if they just keep driving. "Here it is! I told ya!" Lucy is so happy because they finally arrive. The raw and primitive scene is exactly what they expected. Because she wants to save fuel for the trailer, Lucy suggests finding some wood for a campfire. Then they split. On her way, Lucy finds a tattered tent. Sometimes she finds some pieces of dead animals, but she only thinks that it's normal when wild animals can be around here. Soon, she comes back with wood in her hand.
Why is Jack taking so long? That's strange.
Lucy thinks. It's been a while, but Jack hasn't come back, so Lucy decides to rest on the trailer while waiting for Jack. But soon comes the sleepiness. Lucy quickly falls asleep. Lucy has no idea how long she has slept, but suddenly in her dream, she hears someone mumbling and rummaging in the trailer.
Jack, you're back?
Uh-huh. Lucy hears Jack's answers, so she keeps on sleeping. But then, suddenly, after a while, she smells a stench. More wondrously, Her face turns itchy and wet. Lucy slowly opens her eyes. What is in front of her eyes is freaking her out. A few centimeters away from her face is a disgusting face. His eyes are glazing over as he's staring at her. His mouth is red and his drool splatters. At this moment, Lucy realizes the itchy and wet feelings on her face were from his licking. Lucy panics. She pushes the man and runs to the door. Lucy runs into the woods. In the dark, she hears the man's steps as he is right behind. Lucy keeps running and running. Suddenly, she trips over something that makes her fall down. Lucy looks around and finds her surroundings sticky, slimy, sloppy. When her eyes get used to the dark, she dazes.
Jack! Jack! Are you okay?
But Jack doesn't move.
Jack?
Lucy looks down. Jack's guts are all out, like he has been ripped off. Lucy is so shocked that she doesn't even realize the psycho has been behind her.
Join your friend.
When she is hopeless, Lucy remembers the knife hanging on the side when she was picking the wood. So, as quickly as lightning, gets the knife and waves it around.
Get off before I call the police!
She seems to hurt the psycho because after that she hears him scream in pain. Then, all of a sudden, Lucy rushes to the RV, locks the door, and drives away. The RV runs on the road, quickly leaving the freaky area behind. Lucy's hands are shaking and her heart is pounding. Her head is full of questions. Who is that psycho? Why did he kill Jack? And at that moment, for no reason, Lucy recalls whispering in her dream, but this time, the sound is clearer than before. Slow down, slow down, slow down. Subconsciously, Lucy steps on the brakes, but the vehicle goes even faster. That's when she realizes that she has lost control. The trailer car kept running in her desperation.
An overnight fire claims one life in Escambia County. According to police, crews were called out to the crime scene just before 1 a.m. The cause of the fire is still under investigation. The victim has not yet been identified.
I'd say the job was not too hard for me. However, the late-night customers were often not easy to deal with, and I met one on my very first time working the night shift. It was a summer evening. I was walking around the stalls, rearranging the items on the shelves. Suddenly, I saw a suspicious woman. She was wearing a huge travel backpack on her shoulder and looking around surreptitiously. It was odd that she just stood there for 15 minutes without buying anything. I felt rather strange, but didn't dare to question or get in trouble on my first day on duty, so I went to the clothing store and rearranged the items there.
Martha, a customer at the frozen meat counter needs help. Get there now.
That was Jonathan, the store manager, observing my job over the radio.
Copy that,
I said back and quickly moved toward there. Surprisingly, the one who needed assistance was the suspicious woman I met earlier. When she saw me approaching, she suddenly left.
How strange. What exactly is she looking for?
I frowned slightly and thought to myself, anyways, I still followed her. As she approached the knife counter, I decided to stop her.
Madam, what are you looking for?
My sudden question startled the woman. She immediately turned to look at me, giving me a forced smile.
I was looking for bread.
Bread? Hasn't she gone back and forth to the bakery a few times?
Bread is over there, in the dairy section.
I felt odd, but smiled and showed her the direction. Instead of saying thanks, she grimaced and left in anger as if I had just done something very rude. Suddenly, just a few aisles away from where I stood, a high-pitched scream rang out. I hurriedly ran over to find that a creepy woman was holding a camp knife and swinging around to scare everyone. She even almost injured a guest.
Jonathan, we're having a problem. Please come over here.
I said over the radio and quickly dialed 911. The woman was still standing there. Her head began to twitch with bloodshot eyes. Her mouth was watering and she was puffing quite hard.
Ma'am, please, put the knife down.
I tried to say in a calm voice, but that woman did not listen. She was still very fierce, her hand firmly grasping the knife.
Ma'am,
I repeated.
Shut up!
The woman shouted, pointing the knife at me. I was so terrified I stepped backward. At that moment, I noticed she kept scratching her neck as she held the knife forward. No one dared to get even one step toward the madwoman.
My baby!
Another woman spoke up. She seemed to be scared to death. The baby carriage was only 2 meters away from the crazy woman. Everyone was so petrified. But then the most unexpected thing happened. The baby in the carriage began to cry intensely.
Shut up! Shut up!
The creepy woman clutched her head and screamed. Then she turned around to see where the crying was coming from. The knife stuck down the item on the counter. Fortunately, Jonathan was able to rush out to push the carriage away and avoid the blade. The woman still seemed angry. She stared at Jonathan with bloodshot eyes.
The police are coming!
I shouted. The woman turned to look at me. As soon as I said that, I trembled in fear and stepped back. The woman with a creepy smile walked towards me. My whole body stiffened, and I couldn't move. Police here! Put down your weapons! The police officer promptly appeared and shouted. The woman stopped and raised her head. She was still breathing heavily, looking madly at the police officer. Put the knife down, he repeated. The woman remained silent. Her eyes turned to look at me. I was so scared that she would aim it at me. I said, put the knife down. The officer said it again. I could see how hard he was trying to stay calm. The insane woman appeared defiant, clutching the knife firmly in her hand. She rushed towards me while raising the knife above her head. The woman fell to the ground, her whole body convulsing, her eyes widening from the electric shock. The officer quickly ran over with the help of several other guests, handcuffing her. I sat on the ground to stare at the madwoman who was taken away. My heart was pounding violently in my chest. After that unpleasant encounter, I became more alert. Whenever I saw a woman with a backpack on her back, the memories of that horrible night just flooded back again.
It's a dreary winter day. I stand in front of my treasure, the Harry Potter collection, while sipping a cup of coffee. This familiar scene reminds me of what happened 10 years ago, when I was just a 10-year-old kid, being a boy who loved to explore things. My best friend at the time was Ronan. Being a die-hard Harry Potter fan, I just called him Ron. And since we're so close, I considered myself Harry as well. Interesting, right? Ron and I loved going to the train station after school. Back then, I always believed that the barrier between platforms 9 and 10 holds the secret entrance to the magical platform 9 3/4, which of course could lead us to Hogwarts. There was a man who often sat at the corner of the railway platform, wearing a cape, like a witch's costume. One afternoon, I noticed a young boy approach the old man with a wand in his hand. "Hey Ron, do you think he's an employee of platform 9 3/4? "No idea." Ron's dusty answer disappointed me. I stopped talking to him, turned to see the empty corner. The old man and the boy with the wand were no longer there. Oh no, I lost track of them. I came to the railway platform, but still, I found nothing. "It's dinner time. We need to go home. After that day, Ron and I were stuck in the house for a whole week due to the heavy snowfall. As soon as the weather improved, we picked up the phone and called his house. Hey, come over. We're gonna go to the station. Don't forget your wand. By the time we got there, it was already dark. Only a few people were passing by. We stood in a familiar place, tried to find the employee of Platform 9 3/4, but that day, he didn't sit in his familiar corner. Ron stared at me in the confusion, so I had to reassure him. If you want to be a witch, you have to trust me. The other day, I saw that man took a boy to Hogwarts. That boy has a wand, just like us. Then, Ron and I approached the place where the man usually sat, but it just made us more disappointed. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew up from nowhere. It brought goosebumps to the back of my neck. Bruh, is that Azkaban Dementor or something? I don't know, but let's go home. It's getting dark. I ignored Ron's words and tried to linger. A few minutes passed. From the darkness suddenly appeared a shadow, a thin and tall body. Oh my god, it's definitely Azkaban Dementor. In the distance, he was dark and threatening. A few seconds later, the shadow approached us and began to show its face. Underneath the cape, I saw ragged clothes. His face was terrifying and gave me nightmares for years. And in his hand was not a magic wand, a bloody knife. He smiled sinisterly, revealing jagged yellow teeth. Run! Ron yelled. No! I spent my whole life preparing for this. And then, loudly chant the incantation, Expecto Patronum. Yet nothing happened. The man almost caught me. While my legs were wobbly with fear, Ron grabbed my hand and we ran as fast as we could. Idiot! You want to die? Run! Just then, I tripped and got my feet stuck in the railway tracks. The madman was still standing over there and laughing. Oh my god, that's it. Am I going to die like this? My fear spiked. I frantically waved my wand to hope for a miracle. The train was already very close that could hit me in any seconds. When I'm about to pass down, Ron ran down and managed to free my leg. He made it out before the train cut through and left the madman, who was still laughing, wildly behind. That night, when Ron took me home, my dad got really mad. He thought I sneaked to the train station without asking his permission. Turns out his concerns are well grounded. During that week, the news had spread about the disappearance of boys my age. In the most recent case, the boy's mother said that after she lost her son while refueling at a gas station near the railway, and the common thing between the boy and the other victims is that they are all Harry Potter fans.
This morning, the body of the mayor's son was found brutally murdered at the Burger King. The killer's identity has not yet been determined. The mayor vowed to make the murderer pay for his crime.
Kyle worked the day shift at a Burger King drive-thru outside the town, and his girlfriend worked the night shift. As usual, Kalia arrived a little early to help her boyfriend clean things up. When Kalia came back after throwing the trash, she saw two shadows appearing behind Kyle. From the dim light inside the counter, she knew it was her ex, Jordan, and his friend. They were both holding weapons, slowly approaching without Kyle even knowing. On the contrary, when Kyle realized his girl was heading toward him, he smiled and waved at her.
Watch out!
Kalia waved in panic to sign Kyle as the men were approaching him, but he assumed that it was just a simple wave. Kyle got choked and fell to the ground. Kalia was scared to death. She ran to the counter hurriedly and frantically. The closer she was, the more terrified she got. Jordan repeatedly hit the hammer on Kyle's body. The sound of the hammer mixing with his cry broke the stillness.
You bastard! How dare you steal my Kalia? You have to pay for this!
He shouted. The friend couldn't even see this, but Kalia had seen it all from the outside. Her eyes were wide open, tears were falling, but her whole body was stiff, too scared to move. Jordan's friend saw her, immediately rushed to the window.
Get her!
Jordan shouted. She was caught and tied to a chair. The friend held her head and kept her eyes open. They made her see everything. They cut Kyle's flesh into small pieces and threw all of them into the blender.
No! Please!
Kalia desperately cried and screamed. Then after a while, she got panicked and passed out in the laughter of Jordan and his friend. Kalia woke up from the nightmare. She was choked in the pain caused by the horrifying memory. Her heart was broken when she knew Jordan wasn't brought into account after murdering Kyle because his father was the mayor. Pain and resentment turned into hatred, and Kalia decided to avenge Kyle. After coming back from the hospital, Kalia locked herself in to learn how to access the dark web from a friend. She wanted to find a supporter for her plan. Her whole body trembled when she saw a video titled "Meat for the Kings" appeared on the screen, showing Jordan eating Kyle's meat in a bun. Her heart broke into pieces once again. She has to kill that monster. Then she finally found someone to help. It was a site named Vengeance Spirits. When Jordan was at the gas station next to the Burger King, he was drugged and taken away by a man wearing a black hoodie and mask. Jordan slowly revived from consciousness, found out he was strapped to a chair inside the Burger King drive-thru where he tortured Kyle. His friend was strangled to death, eyes bulging, mouth gaping. Jordan still had no idea what was going on. He frantically tried to untie the rope. Kalia stepped out from the darkness. Behind her was a man dressed in black with a mask. In Kalia's hand was a sharp knife.
You!
He started to panic when he saw her. Jordan screamed in pain as the masked man slammed the hammer down his leg. Then Kalia repeated what Jordan did to Kyle, giving him exactly 23 hammer blows to his stomach, chest, and head, then using a knife to cut a piece of meat on his thigh. Jordan screamed, tears streaming down his face, too much pain to say a word. Kalia brought the bun containing the thigh meat and stuffed it into his throat.
Meat for the kings.
Kalia laughed creepily. Jordan's mouth was stuffed with the burger, and there was only a faint humming from his throat. The whole process was filmed by the masked man, as Kalia requested.
After the investigation, police found human flesh inside the victim's stomach. It seems like the poor man was forced to eat his own flesh, and the murderer's identity probably will never be found.
In front of the TV, Kalia laughed like crazy. She took a bite from the burger with red meat.
Yuck.
She spat it out and threw the burger to the ground.
Ago, he worked as a security guard for the Mr. Funny toy shop. For your information, it's a factory where people can come by and buy Mr. Funny dummy merchandise. It was 10 p.m. Tiki lazily swung his flashlight around, examining the stalls and entrances. His colleague, Joido, had an unexpected break 3 days ago, so Tiki had to cover this night shift. This funny toy shop is huge with 2 floors. Worse, it was dark everywhere because the shop owner, Mr. Earl, never allows his employees to turn on the power from 9 p.m. onwards. Tiki began to check the first floor, where there were many boxes of Mr. Funny dummy robots for sale. Oh my god, these toys are so creepy. Tiki got a shiver just by looking at these funny dummy robots. Suddenly, a loud noise startled Tiki. It seemed to come from the end of the row of stuffed animals. With a flashlight in his hand, Tiki slowly approached the place. He was so ready to confront an intruder. Yet there was no one, except a funny dummy toy that had fallen to the ground. Tiki was relieved. He picked up the bear and put it back on the shelf. But Tiki turned around. He almost yelled. The flashlight dropped on the floor. In front of him was the robot Mr. Funny Dummy. It had been standing close behind him ever since. The plastic eyes looked so real.
What the hell?
Tiki frantically picked up the flashlight and inspected the robot. How did this thing walk on its own? He's sure a few minutes ago there had not been any robot standing there. Just then, Tiki noticed large shoe prints everywhere. It's when he realized there's someone else in the room. Following the footsteps, Tiki was led to the staff door. Mr. Earl once said that this is the way to the basement. Since there are many electrical devices down there, no staff are allowed to go down there.
But in this case, I have no choice, right?
Tiki didn't have time to give it a second thought. He turned the knock. Surprisingly, the door was wide open. Tiki carefully stepped into the dark hallway to arrive at the basement. There were so many Mr. Funny Dummy down here. They're all dirty and sprawling. They must be defective goods, Tiki thought. They gave off a weird stench that made him nauseous. And as soon as Tiki saw the generator, a shadow ran past him.
Who's that?
Nobody answered. Tiki thought it might be a game of some kids. He turned on the power, determined to catch the intruder. Suddenly, from the upstairs came the sound of rushing footsteps and unceasing laughter. Tiki angrily leaves the basement. Welcoming him is, still, a dense darkness. When heading to the row of stuffed animals, Tiki noticed that Robot was gone. The fear spiked. Tiki knew he had to get out of the funny toy shop. But when he reached the entrance door, he was blocked by the robot from earlier. Tiki tried to calm down, but his throat tightened when he heard the laughter behind. Tiki turned around. In front of him now was a tall man wearing a suit and wearing a Mr. Funny Dummy's head. He was holding a sharp axe, slowly walking towards Tiki.
I told you not to turn on the lights, didn't I?
Saying that, the madman dashed forward and swung his axe down. Tiki tried to hide behind the stalls, but he soon found. He had no choice, but kept running while continuously dodging the axes that were almost cutting his head off. The killer rushed to Tiki's side, kicking him so hard. This time, he failed to dodge the axe and fell into the basement. The murderer was right behind him. There comes another slash. Luckily, it didn't take his life, but severely injured his right hand. Tiki screamed in pain, gritted his teeth, and ran into the tunnel, searching in vain for a way to fight back or at least escape. He tripped over one of the dummies as he ran. As it fell, its head falling off to reveal a rotting corpse inside. In the dark, Tiki realized the security uniform.
Welcome to my Mr. Funny Dummy playground. Do you like my work?
The murderer laughing while slowly raising the axe.
This is it,
Tiki thought, and he closed his eyes tightly. The killers collapsed to the ground. Mr. Funny Dummy's head fell off. Oh God. Inside there was none other than Mr. Earl. Blood splashed all over his head. His eyes rolled back. He's struggling. Tiki's vision faded. He fainted from exhaustion and blood loss. It took Tiki a few days to wake up. At the hospital, he learned that the police had been investigating this case for nearly 3 months. Turns out Earl, the shop owner, loves simulating the Mr. Funny toy shop game. So he used the same tricks to murder 20 security guards at the store. Surprisingly, Joydo is an undercover cop who was stuffed into Mr. Funny Dummy in the basement. It took a lot of effort for Joydo to get out. After successfully escaping, he reported the evidence to his boss and promptly returned to the crime scene. That's when he caught Earl in the act and saved Tiki's life. The police also showed Tiki the pictures of Mr. Funny Dummy with the victim's name written on it, and the robot blocking his exit was labeled Tiki.
When I was a kid, I used to love playing games, especially Minecraft. I never knew that one day Minecraft would ruin my entire life. This story happened 10 years ago, when I was only 15. No, it must be him! It must be him! It must be him! My brother is the one who brought Minecraft to my life, and since we were extremely close, he left his PC at home after moving to college. That night, my parents went to visit my grandmother, so I stayed home alone and played Minecraft with my two best friends, Kai and Evan. Evan and Kai were inviting me to play survival mode. That's strange. I don't want to play this mode because joining unknown servers holds its own risk. But in the end, I joined them anyway. A few minutes later, Kai sent me the link. I clicked in immediately and was led to a large room with 10 other gamers. Oh, Kai and Evan are here. For some reason, I felt relieved when I saw my friends. The game began, and we spread out in different directions. I started building a shelter while Kai and Evan gathered stones for a furnace. Everyone was doing their gameplay except one player. This guy named his character First Creeper, and he didn't do anything. He just stood like a statue right next to me and just followed me around. When I moved, he moved. When I stopped, he stopped. Who the hell is this? I was feeling irritated, so I asked in the chat box. Guys, who is the First Creeper? That freak just follows me without doing anything. Must be some pathetic guy, I guess.
I don't give a shit. Just get back to the game.
I didn't know if that guy could read it, but when I went back to the game screen, First Creeper disappeared. We played Minecraft for hours. When the clock struck 12, it was already dark in Minecraft. Evan was nowhere to be seen, and Kai hid in the shelter while I drifted apart to collect wood. 5 minutes passed. I started to run in the direction of the shelter because I was scared of the zombies. I kept running, but strangely enough, I couldn't find the shelter. Am I lost? So I texted in the chat, Kai, Evan, you there? But no one answered, so I texted them again. Did you guys leave me alone? A new message popped up, but instead of Kai or Evan, that First Creeper guy replied, You're not alone. I shivered and checked at the game screen immediately, but still found myself standing alone. So I went back to the chat. Only then did I find out that everyone was either dead or out of the game, except for the three of us and this First Creeper guy. Kai? Evan? I know you guys are around. Answer me. Still, my friends didn't reply. Don't search for them. It's useless. I've already killed them all. I thought this was a joke because apparently Kai and Devin were still alive. Just right then, I noticed on the chat box to see Kai died, then Evan. See? And now, I just need to kill you, and the game will be over. At this point, I got so frustrated that I couldn't ignore this guy. Then where the hell are you, First Creeper? And he said, I'm after you. Believe it or not, his answer gave me goosebumps. My heart rate increased, so I turned back to check. The room was empty. There's no one but my cat lying on the bed licking her fur. I called Kai and Devin but got no answer. I didn't wait to listen to this crazy guy, so I quit the game. Phew, what a freak. I went to bed and called it a day. About an hour later, I was woken up by the buzzing phone. Hello? It was my brother. He almost shouted into the phone. Are you at home? I lazily replied, Yeah, where else can I go at this hour? For some unknown reason, he was silent for a moment. Then he said in a shaky voice, Then why did the alarm go off? There's no sound of the alarm going off. What are you saying? Then he paused as if to reassure me, saying, You need to hide. I just got notified. Someone broke into our house. I was in a complete state of panic. God, is that the first creeper name from earlier? How could he find my address? Did he track my IP? Did he come here to kill me to win the game? At that moment, I could hear heavy footsteps rushing towards the door of my room. I sprung out of bed. In my room, there's nowhere to hide. I frantically dialed 911. I could hear someone pass through the toilet, my parents' room, and stop in front of my door. With no other choice, I grabbed my baseball bat and hid behind the door. Please don't come in. Please don't come in. Please don't come in. I stood there and prayed, but then the door burst open. I held my breath and stood as still as a statue. Whoever he was, he just stood there for a while. Apparently seeing no one, he slowly closed the door. But suddenly, my cat made a sound and pointed her head to where I was hiding. This is it. I can feel the door opening again. And he slowly poked his head inside. Just a little more. A little more. God, his head is so green. It's the first creeper guy in Minecraft. Ah! Like an animal, I grabbed the baseball bat and hit him on the head with all my might. I don't remember how many times I hit him, but I saw that guy fall down. Blood was flowing from his body, splattering everywhere. Huff, ha, huff, ha, ha, I'm the winner. It took me a while to calm down, but God, that guy didn't seem to be the first creeper. He looked more like a person wearing casual clothes, but wearing the mask of the character. I peeled off the mask off the first creeper. Lying in the middle of a pool of blood was an 18-year-old young man, glaring his dead eyes at me. Half his head was almost crushed. Brother? It was at the end of March in 2021. The Friday Night Funkins game was storming everywhere, and they started to make this game into an arcade game. Since Hannah and I were fans, we knew we couldn't miss this opportunity. Are you sure they have Friday Night Funkins? Once the car was off the highway, I grumbled to Hannah. She seemed really excited.
We'll know soon. The place is in the middle of nowhere, so we won't have to queue.
This amusement arcade is so remote that I hardly found it on my GPS. Besides, the road was so difficult that it took us nearly an hour to get there. It was around 5 p.m. when we arrived. I was pretty disappointed as it was not an amusement arcade like I imagined. It's just like an old warehouse that has been poorly refurbished. I told Hannah to leave, but instead she insisted.
Come on, let's give it a try. At least we'll get free drinks.
Hannah pointed to the poster in front of the door and smiled happily. Then we got in. What? Are you kidding me? I cried out in displeasure. The whole room had only a few arcade machines. The finest place of the room is the dance area designated specifically for Friday Night Funkins. They're all brand new and look like they've never been used. At that moment, a man in his 40s, who appeared to be the owner of the store, came out to greet us. Hello, you are the first to visit us. You can drink as much free Coke as you want. Hannah was so thirsty at this point. She finished in one blink, and then immediately started the Friday Night Funkins Dance Arcade. In terms of me, I didn't like this game as much as she did. If it weren't for the sake of pleasing Hannah, I wouldn't even be here. Anyway, I did not play games, nor drank the free Coke. I just stood there and watched her having fun. Hannah was so busy playing that she forgot the time. It wasn't until 10 p.m. that I managed to pull her out of that place. Are you getting even more obsessed? I dragged Hannah into the car and grumbled. She said nothing, but her face clearly showing irritation, anger, because I interrupted her gameplay. Due to busy exams, we couldn't go there for the next few days. I noticed that Hannah's face turned visibly pale. Therefore, as long as we finished the final exam, I took her there. This time, the shop owner still greeted us warmly and personally brought a tray of water for us. Just like last time, Hannah emptied one and climbed back onto the Friday Night Funkins machine.
Come on, don't just stand there like a statue.
Then I took a small sip and joined Hannah. However, not long after that, I started to feel ill. Abdominal pain, nausea suddenly came from nowhere. I rushed to the bathroom. Half an hour later, the situation was still not getting any better. I forgot my phone outside, so I tried calling outside. But Hannah must be playing, so she couldn't hear me. I had no choice but to stay there for hours due to the pain. I fell asleep without realizing it. I woke up feeling dizzy and bitter in my mouth. It was already dark outside. God, I couldn't believe my eyes. Hannah, she's still dancing like crazy. Her footsteps didn't seem to be tiring, even though her whole body was drenched in sweat. Her face was strangely pale. There were many free bottles of water around, all of which were empty. Hannah, you're dancing for the whole time? I screamed, my stomach still aching. Instead, Hannah ignored me. When I was about to pay, I ran into the old shopkeeper who was carrying another tray of fresh water. As soon as he heard that I was going to leave, his face changed drastically. He just stood there watching and looking at me with anger. I remember begging my friend, "Hannah, let's go home. The shop owner scared the hell out of me." But not only did Hannah listen to me, she became extremely unreasonable. She whirled around in my direction and yelled,
Don't you dare interrupt me again, you freaking psycho!
Then she pushed me hard and I fell to the ground. "Book an Uber by yourself." That night, I left her there and went home alone. After that day, I could not contact Hannah. Neither could her family and friends. Having a bad feeling, I went back to that amusement arcade. Oh, it's only been a few days, and this place has already crowded up considerably. The Friday Night Funkins machine was full, and Hannah was nowhere to be seen. I sighed and went home. Weeks later, Hannah still didn't go to school. Her parents and the police went to look for Hannah, but strangely enough, the place seemed to have disappeared from the map. And just like that, my best friend disappeared. As time passed, I forgot about that event. Until yesterday, when I was surfing the dark web, I accidentally discovered some pictures posted by a hidden user. In the picture was an amusement arcade that was seemingly located in a remote place. Yet, it attracts unexpected visitors. My eyes fixed on the photo of the restaurant's poster. God, is that Hannah? My friend? I scrolled all the way down to the bottom and found a video attached.
My best friend Lisa was a wonderful person. This horror story I'm gonna tell you didn't happen to me. It happened to her. Unlike me and our friends back then, Lisa had no financial support, so she had to help herself. She had to do all sorts of part-time jobs to pay the bills. This was starting to interfere with her education and her social life as well. This really wasn't working out for her, so she started looking for smaller sort of side hustles online. I didn't know much about the website aside from the fact that it was known for adult content and pretty much every Instagram girl had one in their bio. Lisa bragged to me that she could make hundreds of dollars just by taking pictures. Men were thirsty enough to just drop money on a picture of her feet or a picture of her crying. Of course, from time to time, she also gets some weird requests from customers, some asking her to hold a hair clipper or demanding her to cry while tearing her fishnet tights. Out of curiosity, I registered an account, recharged to follow Lisa's account. I was really shocked. I warned her that it was a bad idea. Lisa was blown away by the easy money that my words no longer mattered. Some weeks later, I noticed something was off. Lisa was absent from her class, more frequently than ever. More strangely, Monday was always a fixed date for us to meet for lunch at the school canteen, but Lisa didn't even show up. I called her a few times, but got no response. At the end of the day, I decided to contact her parents' house, but they said they couldn't reach her either. When I checked my phone, I found out that she hadn't even been online since 2 days ago. Having a bad feeling, I called the police and reported Lisa as a missing person. The police finally got a warrant to search through her apartment, but when they looked through there, they saw no traces of any violence or that anything could have happened. A week, a month, and a half a year have passed. The police still have no clue. No one knows whether Lisa was alive or dead. Her parents are devastated, so am I. But I still pray for Lisa every day. And I believe she is in a much better place in the real world. A year has passed. It's not until now that I can finally let out a sigh of relief. It was a genius plan. I left her body in the basement of an abandoned farmhouse about 100 miles from the city. It's her fault. I couldn't bear the thought of her exposing her flesh and skin to such strangers. Not me. If Lisa hadn't been so stubborn, if she just deleted the damn account, things might have been different. That nightmare keeps coming back again and again. It was Friday night. I had a night shift at a 7-Eleven gas station. I used to be a medical student. I didn't have any financial support, so I went to work part-time to earn extra income. I usually didn't garner as many customers as the day shift would. Maybe just the occasional night owls or creeps that would stop by. Let me in! Let me in! Let me in! Dealing with such guys, I usually locked the window and ignored it. However, such incidents didn't happen often, so I didn't mind either. $30 for pump 3, please. It was Lisa, a patron that I've been keeping an eye on for quite some time. Lisa must have been assigned to work the night shift like me. After putting the money in the drawer, I locked eyes with her to observe more of this woman's charm. Lisa was refueling, but her gaze was elsewhere. And next to her, I saw the same homeless guy approaching her. His eyes were bloodshot and twitchy. This freak again. Son of the... Before I could finish my sentence and run out to warn Lisa, I froze. The man yanked the gas pump from the vehicle and sprayed her with gasoline. I never saw that coming. I quickly called 911 and was about to help, but as soon as I reached the door, I knew it was all too late. The man lit, and Lisa's gasoline-soaked body was literally on fire. Hello, what's your emergency? The other end of the line picks up the phone, but I'm dead in my track. Lisa yelled out in agony, her screams tearing up everything. It was the scream of a soul dying. Help me! You have to help me! My whole body is drenched in sweat. It's 2 a.m. So, today, I've only got 3 hours of sleep. I walk out of the bedroom and go to the kitchen to have a drink. A glass of cold water will bring my heart rate back to normal. Then, I decide to take a trip down to the basement even though I was there all night. The basement is dim. My eyes catch a weak light shining from the corner of the room. On the old mattress lies the person I love so much. She's sleeping peacefully. Lit would be nice if she was always quiet like this. Suddenly her eyes get wide open and she stared dead at me. Ah, honey, do you wake up so early? She doesn't utter a word. Only when I'm about to leave, She grabs my arm and moans, "Please help me." "Darling, I'm helping. It's only getting better, I promise." As soon as I finished my sentence, she went crazy like an animal. She was messing around and tearing me apart. I took a step back, and she still stormed forward despite her unhealed wounds. As expected, the chain from her ankle jerked her back, making her fall to her knees. Normally, Lisa is very gentle, girlfriend. But at some times like this, only this chain can hold her back. I gave her an injection to put her back to sleep, then locked the basement and went back to my bedroom. Half a year has passed, but the police and those people still haven't given up on Lisa. If only they knew that she was with the one who loves her the most, accepts her no matter how distorted she becomes. Of course, if you're wondering, the guy that made her come to be like this was taken care of a long time ago. I left everything behind just for Lisa, after she finally asked me for help that night. You don't understand, neither will she. I get it, but I for sure will never give up on her. Ever. Hello, what's your emergency? When I was a last-year medical student, I was sent to practice at a psychiatric hospital located pretty far from the city. On my first day at the hospital, I was quite creeped out. It's not like the hospital is haunted or anything, but I noticed the staff giving me an uninviting stare, and the patients looked like the kinds of people you would see in one of those exorcist movies. I remember two people that needed special care, one of them named May, the old woman that always acted like she was a kid. I heard that May had been an alcoholic for her whole life. She lost her child in a car accident, plus being abused by her husband made her health even worse. Every day, I had to play along with her game to entice May to take medicine. "Please play with me, Daddy." The other was a room away. He was a mutant about 7 feet tall. That creepy patient always gave me a disturbing staring, like he wanted to eat me alive. Once I gave him the medicine and reminded him to take it, but before I could finish my sentence, he lifted me up and squeezed me so tight that I could hardly breathe. Another staff member intervened in time and saved me. After that incident, I always watched behind my back just in case. That night, it's 2 a.m. When I was about to end my shift, my colleague hasn't come yet, but I was so tired that I decided to head home. As I was walking to the elevator, I was suddenly startled by a loud noise. I then turned back to see an empty hallway. That's all in my head, I thought to myself, and kept walking. But just as I stepped into the elevator and was about to close the door, I heard a giggling of some kids. "May, is that you?" No one answered. Curiosity got the best of me. I had to give it an investigation. The light of May's room was still off, but she was nowhere to see. While I was peering around to see if May had strayed into the wrong room, I noticed that the door to the tall man's room was not closed. Looking through the gap, I saw someone's feet lying on the floor behind the bed. Well, this is strange. Then, I gently opened the door to reveal the most disturbing scene ever. Lying there was May, surrounded by large pools of blood. The tall man, he was burying his face in her tiny belly, munching and growling. I was speechless at that moment. May didn't scream, but I could see tears welling in the corners of her eyes. And then she saw me, her hand still holding the heart shape that we had decorated since afternoon. Tried so hard to reach for me, but couldn't. "I'm sorry, my baby boy." Feeling nothing but blind terror, I rushed out of the room. I remembered calling the security and the police when shakingly stood in the elevator. Shortly after, when I was giving my statements, the police showed me the camera footage of that night. As I was lazily walking towards the elevator, the tall man's door opened, and when he stepped out, it seems that he wanted to follow me, but was held back by May, who also happened to come out at that moment. She was then dragged into his room It has been a while, but I was still haunted. I received a phone call from my ex-colleague. While talking about the traumatic experience, he asked me, "By the way, did you watch him swallowing his pills?" An electric current passed through my body. I froze. The truth is, I was always afraid of getting in trouble with him, so I never did that. This story happened on Christmas a couple of years ago. At the time, many children were reported to be missing in my region. Here's the common. At the places where the police lost trace of those missing children, people found Polaroids of them, which had been taken on the day they went missing. While I was busy preparing dinner, Sean, my hyperactive 5-year-old son, kept whining. "Mommy, Mommy, can I have a cookie?" I really needed to focus on my work, so I tried to bribe Sean with a cookie and a tall glass of milk to make him sit still. "Mommy, I hear jingling of Santa's reindeer." Thank God, finally something to keep him busy. Probably just the old man next door, walking his corgi. But whatever. I'm going to rain on his parade. I returned to the kitchen. As a single mother, I should at least impress my parents with a hearty meal for tomorrow. At the very last, it can prove to them that I've still been fine. Just a few minutes later, my train of thought was interrupted again by my son's voice. "Mommy, Santa is here. I heard a loud jingle and footsteps. Listen, listen." I still can't take my eyes off the turkey, sighing and trying to ignore him. But in the end, I still had to give up, rinse the slime off my hands and step out of the kitchen. Okay, I'm coming." I listened. I froze, my heart began to pound. It wasn't the jingling of bells or a leash. It was the jingling of keys. Someone is trying to get the key to my door. See? I told you the truth. Before Sean could finish his sentence, I grabbed my son's arm and dragged him out of the living room. The sound stopped. But then there were footsteps. I hugged Sean tightly, squeezing him so hard that his face contorted with pain. I was startled and screamed. Sean then broke free from my arms and ran towards the chimney, and then, like a child overjoyed when he received Santa's gift, his face lit up. A small box wrapped in black paper had fallen in through the fireplace. It was too late. He picked it up, grinning. The smile on Sean's face quickly disappeared. Then he frowned. "It's not mine. It's for you, Mommy." I fraud her, rinsing panic, hands shaking. I picked it up. On the outside of the box was my name, Maddie, written in red ink. I opened the lid. The note read, "You changed the locks." My heart pounding, I held the note in my hand, only to find underneath the paper was a brand new Polaroid photo. In the picture was Sean and I in the kitchen. It was Christmas Eve. I took my son, Tom, into the bedroom at around 10 o'clock. I gave him a cheek kiss. My little boy was lying in bed, resisting his sleepiness to tell me stories. "Mommy, I threw a big snowball in Mr. Ben's face this evening." Tom isn't a mischievous boy, but this was not the first time I heard some kinds of stories like this. Since today was a holiday, I didn't scold him, just asking, "Did he get mad at you?" I noticed the excitement in his eyes. "No, Mummy, he was just joking that he would come back for a resentment." What a relief. Mr. Ben was our friendly and decent neighbor. If it wasn't him, Tom probably got in big trouble. "Okay, close your eyes now if you want Santa Claus to come." I'll be back before you wake up. I promise. And I turned off the light and gently closed the door. It was just Tom and me the whole time, so I feel very guilty when I have to work on Christmas Eve. I forgot to mention I'm a nurse, and nights like Christmas would make me busier than ever. I locked the door and left the house at 11:15. Didn't forget to leave a glass of milk and some cookies on the table. As expected, I was so tied up that I didn't even have time to check my phone. It's already 7 a.m. Tom probably has been sleeping. I unlocked my phone to see a lot of missed calls. All are calls from home that were sent at 12 o'clock at night. Oh no! Knowing something was off, I rushed to my apartment. The door was only half closed. I was so sure I had locked it. There was snow on the doorknob and the floor. Tom, are you awake? He didn't answer. That's when I noticed the glass of milk was spilled on the table, pouring onto the carpet that Tom loved. I called his name, but still. When I got back, it was the dead silence. I glanced around. The apartment had stopped at the bedroom door. Oh my God! The door, it had a huge hole in the middle and was littered with traces of snow. Tom, not having enough time to think, I rushed into the room. It's like there had been a snowball fight everywhere. Fear and panic swelled within me. I rummaged through the closet under the bed to find nothing. There's still one place I didn't check. I brushed the snow off the bed, but still couldn't see my son. Under the snow there was a large pool of blood instead. Someone left a note. It read, "Tom is not a good boy. We always find wonder under the Christmas tree, don't we?" Trembling with anxiety and fear, I headed to the corner of the living room. The Christmas tree was flashing with lights. That's when I noticed bedside the gift boxes that my mother and I had prepared. There was also a box wrapped in red paper that I had not seen before. It was so big that a kid could fit. A kid like Tom. Tom. Never in my life had I experienced such horror. I stepped in the living room and shakingly opened the lid of the gift box. Inside was chest-deep snow and my baby boy. Tom couldn't move. Mouth was overstuffed with snow, and his eyes were red and watery.
But I know and remember exactly what I have been through. More than 20 years have passed. The memory of the strange parade still haunts me, even in my sleep. July 4th, 20 years ago, my parents and I went to my father's brother's house in the suburbs, which took us 4 hours of driving. I was overwhelmed by the gorgeous view of the street. I even saw the colorful antique cars ready for the parade.
Where are the parade people from?
I asked my cousin, Claire.
I don't know.
Claire shrugged. I noticed that the cars were moving into the forest.
I wonder where they'll go after the parade.
Not waiting for Claire to answer, I ran after the convoy into the forest.
Max! Max! Wait!
Ouch! Suddenly I slipped and fell. Claire helped me get up, and the two of us kept chasing after those people. Claire and I ran into the forest, but when we got deeper, all the colorful cars had disappeared, as if they had evaporated.
Where are they?
I turned to Claire, but was surprised to find out that she too had disappeared.
Claire?
I panicked and called her name, but all I received was silence.
Claire? Where are you?
There was no reply. The many noises of the parade resounded in the air. Peeking through the foliage, I saw a man in a strange outfit, looking like Uncle Sam. He was very tall and skinny. His head swayed, then slowly moved in front of me.
Happy 4th of July.
He greeted me in a hoarse voice.
Who are you?
A little scared, I stepped back.
Are you looking for Claire? The little girl has already joined us. Follow me.
He was like a robot. After finishing his sentence, he quickly turned away. I couldn't wait to see Claire, so I followed the man. The sight before me made my eyes widen in surprise. That was the parade in the town earlier, but the people looked very strange. They were like a circus troupe, and even though they were all dressed in festive costumes, their bodies were in many different shapes. Some were tall and raw-boned, some were terribly fat, and some had a super crooked gait. The only thing they had in common was their black eye sockets and lifeless faces.
Happy 4th of July. Come and join us.
One man handed me a strange flag and hat. At that moment, I was hypnotized. For a second, I forgot about Claire and just unconsciously kept following those strangers. As the procession passed through a cemetery,
Ouch!
I suddenly tripped. That brought me back to my senses to see Claire right in front of me. She was in a weird dress, just like the crowd. I pushed my way through the crowd and walked over to her.
Hey, Claire!
I called.
Claire!
I patted her shoulder again, but she seemed to ignore me. I panicked and pulled Claire away. The others immediately turned their heads to chase after us. I was scared to death, tears welling up in my eyes. I didn't know what to do but pull Claire and run as fast as possible. After running a while, I was so tired that I stopped.
Claire, are you okay?
Claire's face terrified me. Her two eye sockets were like a black hole.
Claire!
I cried and shook Claire, but she didn't sober up.
You joined them!
A shiver went down my spine. Poor Claire.
Join us! Join us!
The strange people still chased right after us, especially the man in the strange hat who kept shouting those words. I was too terrified, so I left Claire to run away. I didn't stop until I saw a glaring light. I used all my strength to get there. When I woke up, I found myself lying on the bed. Adults said that they found me panting in front of the forest. Perhaps I had bumped into something. When I asked about Claire, everyone looked at me with puzzled expressions. "There is no Claire," my uncles said. This almost drove me crazy. I obviously had a cousin named Claire, and together we followed the parade into the woods, even taking part in the bizarre procession. Even though I kept insisting her existence, they still didn't believe me. They assumed that the story about Claire and the strange parade was purely my imagination.
She joined them.
The Millers have two daughters, Clara and Ellen. Unfortunately, Ellen, the older sister, was born with a birth defect and spent the rest of her life in a wheelchair. It was a snowy day. Clara and Ellen just came home, and immediately her mother complained.
Clara, did you scare your friends with spiders? The teacher called me again.
Clara sighed, so her mother knew it. But because her parents were very indulgent, she would get away with it this time. As she thought, she put on a pitiful expression and said,
No, Mom, she made a fuss about it. It was just a prank.
Because she was protected by Ellen, she got rid of the crime. Then, Clara pushed Ellen's wheelchair up the stairs and went to her room.
Seriously? I only got 20,000 views for this video?
As soon as she opened TikTok, Clara was extremely angry. Actually, what the teacher said is not quite wrong. Not only did Clara bring spiders to scare her friend, but she also forced her to eat them alive. Clara responded with a shrill laugh.
No one dares to save you.
While struggling to find a new way to increase the view, she suddenly heard her mom calling for dinner. Clara just turned around and was startled because Ellen had been waiting for her at the door since. As soon as she saw Clara, Ellen quickly turned away. At that moment, Clara had a crazy idea. Ellen's leg wouldn't feel anything anyway, Clara thought. Then she hurriedly called down.
Mom, we're coming.
While setting the phone to recording mode, Clara slowly pushed down Ellen's wheelchair. She only went half of her way when the chair suddenly shook and Ellen fell down the stairs.
Ellen, no!
Clara screamed, but she couldn't hold her sister in time. As soon as she heard the noise, Mrs. Miller rushed out of the kitchen, and witnessing this scene, she was stunned. Ellen collapsed at the bottom of the stairs, and due to the fall from above, the joint of her leg was broken and twisted backward. Even the wrist was no longer in its original joint shape. Ellen lost consciousness, and Mrs. Miller quickly dialed 911. No one noticed Miller's eerie smile as she pressed the save video button. 2 weeks later, Ellen had to stay at home. Since that video, Clara's TikTok view has significantly increased. Some praised, some criticized, but in the end, they all just considered it an incident. Recently, Clara had run out of ideas. She came back to a lot of things: music, punk rock fashion, and videos forcing her friends to eat worms. But nothing seemed to attract as many views as the scene where Ellen falls down the stairs. So Clara decided to make another video with Ellen, but this time she would be more creative. On a cold February evening, when the Millers were asleep and Ellen climbed onto a bed by herself, the house sank into the stillness of sleep. But there was one person who hadn't slept, and that was Clara. She was in the kitchen and streaming on TikTok.
Okay, guys, this is all we need.
Clara took out a sharp knife from the kitchen. Then she headed straight to the second-floor bedroom where Ellen was sleeping. Clara stroked her sister's serene face, curious about this face in a few more minutes.
Let's do this.
Clara looked into the camera and then slowly raised the sharp knife. With one hand, she pressed the rag to her sister's mouth and held it tight. With the other hand, she stabbed her sister with a strong, decisive blow to her stomach. Ellen woke up in a panic. Before she could understand what was going on, the next slash continued to fall, and then another to another slash. Ellen's pain was in her bones. She tried to struggle, but couldn't get rid of it. All Ellen could do was to let out a hum.
Don't spoil the evening.
As soon as she finished speaking, Clara stabbed the knife straight into Ellen's neck. Blood spurted from it, splashing all over her face and clothes. God, Clara didn't think things would get this messy. She quickly covered the pillow over the face and neck of Ellen, who was now struggling on the bed. However, the layer of blood quickly soaked the pillow. It felt like enough now. Clara ended the stream, then quietly went outside the house and called 911.
Clara Miller, 14, was arrested at the scene. The murder happened while the Millers were sleeping, and no one knew about it. Due to blood loss, the victim did not survive and officially died at 4 a.m. today. A video is becoming viral on TikTok, believed to be the video the murderer shot right after stabbing her sister to... I stabbed my sister. I stabbed my sister. I stabbed my sister. I stabbed my sister. I stabbed my sister.
passed away when I was a child. As a teen, I used to stay up way past midnight every night, watching terrifying videos on YouTube. My mom had always emphasized the importance of sleeping well to me and would definitely disapprove of my late-night routine. So I knew that if she caught me at that time, I'd be in big trouble. When I was 16 years old, my peaceful town was in turmoil as some children were suddenly disappearing. But you know, in the countryside, it's normal for kids like us to run away from home for a few days. Facing this news, my mum even grew more and more paranoid. Every night, I'd hear one of them wandering into my room, checking on me. And every night, she always checked on my brother, Daniel, first, and then came to my room. Even though she tried to walk softly, I could hear her footsteps. I'd immediately turn off my light and pretend to be asleep. I heard the door open, and my mother's tiptoe stepped into the room. I wondered if she knew I wasn't sleeping, because often it was only after what seemed like hours before they'd finally leave. The 16-year-old me felt my privacy was violated. However, I didn't dare cough a word because that only confirmed her suspicions. It was Saturday night. My mom got the news that my grandmother had been sent to the emergency room, so she had to leave home that night. Before heading off, she gave me a stern word reminding me to lock the doors and take good care of Daniel, who was so scared of ghosts at that time. She told me she'd be watching through the security cameras to make sure I'd follow that properly. To be honest, I was quite glad that I had the whole evening to watch horror movies. My mother had just left, so I called my friend to bring me the movie, Silence of the Lambs, to watch. A few minutes later, my friend arrived, holding the DVD in hand. I was extremely excited and hurriedly turned on the TV to watch. Meanwhile, my brother Daniel sat next to me coloring. Now it's 10 o'clock. I urged Daniel to go to bed. It took me half an hour to settle him down. I gently closed the door and went to the living room to finish the movie. I couldn't have my mom knowing that I was staying up late, so I did something naive and ignorant, something I'll always regret. I turned off the security cameras. For the next 2 hours, my eyes never strayed from the screen. It was late at night, and the movie gave me goosebumps. Sometimes I feel like someone is standing behind me, but I know it's all made up in my head. Around 12 o'clock, I suddenly heard the door creak from Daniel's room. Maybe my brother got up to drink water. For a while, still not leaving the screen, I called out, "Daniel, are you not asleep yet?" No one answered. Feeling strange, I went to Daniel's room to check. The door was still closing. "Daniel?" I whispered. He didn't reply, but I could see him under the cover. I went back to the living room to finish watching the movie. It was about to reach the climax of the movie when suddenly I felt a strong wind blowing from nowhere. I glanced quickly toward the corner of the room. The main door was unlocked. The strong wind blew it open. Oh my God! This is bad! This is so bad! Could it be? Having a bad feeling, I grabbed the baseball bat and crept up to Daniel's bedroom. "Daniel, are you asleep?" Usually this noise would have woken him up. I knew something was wrong. I turned the blanket over to check. What? Lying in the blanket was not Daniel, but a strange man I had never seen before. He was pale, and his eyes were bloodshot and had huge gaping fangs under them. While I was still motionless in fear, he grabbed my hand and squeezed it. Shocked and panicked, I smacked him on his disgusting face with my baseball bat. I hit him so hard that blood splattered my face, and eventually he had to let go of me. I rushed to my bedroom, locked the door, and called the police. I was so worried about Daniel. I hadn't seen him ever since. Had he been kidnapped? No, I don't want to think about it. My poor Daniel. A few minutes later, the police arrived, and my mother was home shortly after. The stranger was nowhere to be found. All they found were bloodstains on the bed, and Daniel, my dear brother, shivering in the closet. He must have been like me, pretending to be asleep and hiding in the closet as soon as he heard a strange noise at the door. And since I turned off the camera, the police never found him. A few months later, when things had calmed down, I joked with my mother. I see why you're so worried that you have to check my room every night. My mother looked at me with concern. What do you mean? I never checked your room after you slept.
It took me a couple of weeks to find affordable accommodation. It was the Celine Hotel, with a pretty cheap rental rate, even being located in the center of downtown Los Angeles. So, I booked a room without hesitation. Sharing a room with me was a girl from Canada, named Sharon. Sharon was quite weird. I mean, most of the time she showed a cold or grumpy face, which made it hard to strike up a conversation with her. More than once I saw her violently throw her bottles of medicine into the trash, but then just pick them up and put them back in her backpack. I guess she was suffering from some kind of illness. I felt for her, but her strange behavior really made me sick. I often heard her mumbling something as if she was pissed off. Probably she was implying me, but I was unsure as she didn't even look at me. One day, when I was about to change my clothes, Sharon suddenly swung the door open. She rushed and panicked while frantically rummaging through her luggage.
This is not good. This is not good.
She mumbled. That was so rude of her, and I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to have an intervention with Sharon, so I moved slowly toward her.
Hey, Sharon? No, no, no!
She shouted.
Can't take it anymore!
Then she turned around and grabbed my wrist. I didn't expect a petite girl like Sharon to be so strong. My wrist was squeezed so tightly that I started to feel the pain. Sharon panted, her bloodshot eyes staring at me with her gnashing teeth. She was going crazy.
Sharon!
I called her name in agony while her hand was still brutally crushing my wrist.
Why don't you let me go?
Sharon yelled, but I didn't understand what she was saying.
Why?
She suddenly grabbed my shoulder. I was really scared at this point. I used all my strength to push her hand away. God, she squeezed horribly.
Why? Why?
She still couldn't stop screaming. I had no choice but to push her so hard that she fell, then run away from the room before she could do anything worse. That's enough of it. I couldn't bear it any longer. Immediately, I informed the receptionist to move Sharon to another room. When the hotel manager came to my room very soon after, I laid still in bed and watched Sharon pack her things up. At that moment, she just looked at me, her eyes strangely sad. She dragged the suitcase and followed the hotel manager without saying a word. That day, when I took a shower, I realized the water pressure seemed to be weak with an unusual smell. So I turned off the faucet and then went to bed. In the middle of the night, while dreaming, I suddenly woke up to see a figure standing in the corner of the room. That hoodie reminded me of Sharon.
Sharon?
For a moment, I breathed a sigh of relief, but just a second later, I had a sense that something was wrong. Her whole body was drenched in water. I could clearly hear the dripping sound on the floor. Her hair was tangled in clumps. Her limbs were swollen and mottled. Sharon just stood there with her head down for a while. Then suddenly she walked away. For unknown reasons, I subconsciously followed Sharon even though I was stiff and terrified.
Sharon? Where are we going?
She didn't answer, but led me to the elevator. Sharon stared at the elevator buttons without saying a word. We walked through the hallway with bright red lights until we met a locked iron door. Sharon stopped. She suddenly turned her head. Her eye sockets were a black hole from which 2 lines of black water flowed. Her face was pale, puffy, with her mouth wide open. I woke up startled, sweat drenching my pillow. In the stillness of the night, I could even hear my heart pounding in my chest. It was just a nightmare. The phone kept ringing for a while. That was a call from the hotel manager. He declared Sharon was missing. They showed me the camera footage. Oh my God, Sharon! She was showing signs of strange behavior in the hotel elevator, as if hiding from someone. I was even more shocked when I realized that the time displayed on the camera was the day Sharon got mad. The police told me not to leave the hotel during this time. The missing case of Sharon was really shocking. Everyone was searching for her. I returned to the bathroom to wash my face. Then I found the water had an unpleasant stench. It even had an abnormal color, brownish and a rotten smell like sewage. I couldn't take this anymore, so I decided to report it to the hotel manager. It turned out I wasn't the only one having trouble with the water. A married couple on the same floor also complained of drinking water with a strange smell. A maintenance worker, together with the hotel manager, inspector, and the police, went to the rooftop to check the water tanks. And when the heavy roof manhole was gradually opened, everyone was all shocked and terrified. "Hey, beautiful," the man whistled, teasing Alice. Instead of feeling offended, she just smiled and winked at the man. The man was pleased by that. He came closer and started to flirt with Alice.
Not here.
She whispered in his ear, then walked to the encounter. The man was a little bit drunk. He licked his tongue with pleasure and followed Alice. "No, please!" The man was tied to the chair, crying and begging. His face was bruised and his clothes were wrinkled. Alice put on the boxing gloves, standing in front of the man.
That was too much.
He asked for it.
She smirked and moved toward the man. Most people thought that if you're a Hooter girl, there's a long list of things you should be concerned about. Impolite guests during working hours, bullying, harassment, and even murdering. But for Alice and her co-workers here, it was totally different. Here, the Hooters girls were justices. Their victims were perverts who often stalked Hooters girls. After cleaning and fixing the clothes, Alice put a familiar smile on her pretty face and went out to serve the new customers. Suddenly, from the front door came a well-dressed tall man, pretty good-looking. However, his eyes when he saw the Hooters girls told Alice that he was a pervert.
What a pity.
She thought about when the handsome face would turn into a mess.
Welcome to Hooters, darling. What would you like to eat, Mr.
Joydo. Oh, sorry. It's my first time here. Can I get some chicken wings with Budweiser beer?
Alice giggled. After noting down the order, she quickly came back to the encounter.
Hey, why don't you come and serve me?
One customer whistled.
How about having some fun tonight?
The other smirked. Alice had identified the target. She was about to do her plan. However, Joydo suddenly stood up and pointed at the perverts.
Hey, shut your mouths or I will do it for you.
Joydo's words worked. The two customers shut their mouths and turned back to their table.
Thank you,
Alice said and walked away.
So, keeper or creeper?
Melissa asked. Alice shrugged, then looked at Joydo. Melissa looked at her for a moment, then said sternly,
Be careful, Alice, or else.
But Alice was busy staring at the phone number she had just saved on her phone. 2 weeks later, Joydo still often came to Hooters to meet Alice. He even asked her out after work. Alice happily said yes.
I'll be watching,
Melissa said as Alice was about to leave the place. Joydo gently opened the car door for Alice.
So where are we going?
Alice asked.
An interesting place,
Joido said. Gradually, Alice sensed something wrong. The road was getting solitary.
Are we getting there yet?
She asked while looking around.
Almost there,
he replied. Alice wasn't a dum-dum. She quickly realized Jodo's plan. However, in the current situation, she couldn't resist him immediately, but had to wait for a chance. The car finally stopped. Just as Alice expected, Joido locked the door.
What are you doing?
Alice drew back, but there was no more room for her. Joido revealed his true evil face. He rushed to Alice. Joido finally regained consciousness. There was only darkness embracing him. He was tied to the chair with his mouth covered by tape. Surrounding him was a wet and dark room with cold rock walls. There was only one bulb in the middle of the room, and when he could see things better, he totally freaked out. Tied in front of him were the two customers who teased Alice previously, and they all freaked out.
Don't you relate? Becoming a prey in your own hunting game.
Alice smirked. Joido wasn't expecting his meticulous plan was detected by Alice. He despised and hated the Hooters girls. He had made a perfect plan to trap Alice, but he didn't know that she knew it all.
Alice, this is a mistake.
His voice was shaking. Alice smirked. There was no way she would believe his words. She put on her boxing gloves and slowly moved towards him. Joido screamed in pain after a punch to his face. Alice's punch was so hard, it left his lips bleeding. That didn't stop Alice from keeping doing her job. Until she stopped, Joido's face was swollen. He could even hardly open his eyes.
Please!
But replying to his begging was Alice's savage laughter. Melissa, who had witnessed everything, gave Alice a hammer.
I love the faces that you make.
Alice whispered to Joido's ear, at the same time raising the hammer.
Hi, I'm your Hooters girl tonight.
Alice, with a smiley face, walked to the customer who had a floppy beard. The customer put his arm around her shoulders without hesitation.
Hi, darling.
Bayside High School prom was one of the most anticipated events of the year. 1 hour or two before the party got started, there were already a long line of boys and girls in splendid costumes in the hall. Stella, arm in arm with Julian, among that line, was about to enter the dancing hall. But suddenly, Stella felt something wrong with her stomach, so she had to go to the bathroom immediately. It took her more than 30 minutes to get better. Angrily cursing the lentil stews, Stella fixed her clothes and got out. After she closed the bathroom door, she noticed that it was oddly quiet for a party.
Is the prom over?
When Stella turned around, she was startled by a clown standing at the end of the hallway. He stood still like a statue. Maybe that was just a mascot the school hired for the party. But when she was about to move, the clown suddenly turned around. Stella realized there was a chainsaw in his hand. He stood still like a statue. Stella quickly ran away. At that point, Stella was extremely panicked. She didn't know what to do but just keep running in vain. Stella ran through a few turns, thinking she had escaped, but she was wrong. Another clown was standing right there. He raised his saw overhead. Luckily, Stella dodged. She kept running away. After a while, she managed to hide in a classroom. Just then, another clown appeared in the deep hallway, holding a bat in his hand. He dragged the bat against the wall while walking. The creaky sound made Stella tremble in fear. She bit her lip to stop herself from crying. The clown was standing at the door, right in front of the room where Stella was hiding. He stood there for a few minutes, then left. Stella was still in shock. She didn't know what was going on, nor why they were chasing her. She called Julian 100 times, but he didn't pick up the phone. Stella tried to keep calm and dialed 911.
Please help! There's a bunch of clowns in the school and they want to kill me!
The operator's voice did calm her down a bit. They said the police would arrive immediately, and until that, she had to stay right in the same spot. But the clowns could come at any moment.
I think I should go out and check.
No, Stella, don't.
The dispatcher said. Sure enough, Stella had just stepped out when a clown appeared. The guy aggressively opened the door, but there was no one inside. Stella was scared, her heart pounding like it was going to explode. She ran down the hallway to find the exit. The exit door was locked.
They locked the door!
She cried in panic.
The school is locked down!
She was too disturbed to hear the operator's words clearly. Now the only thing she thought about was to hide from the clowns. She rushed to the hall. It was just a few steps away. Stella could hear the clown's footsteps echoing throughout the corridor. She wiped her tears and pushed open the door, but the scene inside left her petrified. Blood was everywhere, on the walls and the disco balls, on ragged banners and the gorgeous dresses. Bodies were strewn in the cold room. Stella stepped inside. There were no survivors. All her friends were lying motionless on the floor.
Stella? What's wrong?
The operator's voice woke Stella up.
They are all dead.
Stella's voice choked. Her whole body was shaking, and her legs were stuck to the ground. She was so shocked that she couldn't move.
Stella, please make sure you're in a safe place, okay?
Yes.
Stella locked the door, frantically looking for a place to hide while she waited for the police to arrive. However, what Stella expected least was right behind her. She heard the sound of the chainsaw again. When Stella turned around, the last thing she saw was 3 identical clowns. And she, all by herself, in this room full of corpses.
Stella! After more than 30 minutes, police finally arrived at Bayside High School. The assailants were arrested while fleeing the scene. Regrettably, more than 30 students have all...
My girlfriend, Rosamund, was an Instagram influencer famous for her vegetarian lifestyle. To me, her eating habit was way annoying, especially when we hung out together. For example, while all I wanted was a quick meal at McDonald's, Rosamund was the opposite. She really hated it when I munched a burger. On one of our dates, we decided to go shopping, then eat out at noon. On the long street, we couldn't find any other restaurants other than McDonald's.
No, not again!
Rosamund shook her head. Come on, Rosie. I'm so hungry. You don't love me anymore, huh? I insisted. After a while, she eventually reluctantly followed me to my heaven of fast food. Rosamund seemed so disturbed at the menu.
Looks like I have to starve myself again.
She got angry because there were no vegan dishes. She left me at the counter and stormed to the booth. So I ordered my usual Big Mac combo meal and an unsweetened iced tea. When I came back with the food, Rosamund suddenly changed her attitude. Just a few seconds ago, she was mindlessly scrolling through Instagram.
Hope you enjoy eating meat. Yay!
She pouted and turned away. She acted as though I were sinning just because I was eating a burger.
Come on, Rosie. One bite won't make you sick.
I begged her again.
One bite? It's meat! Don't you care about those animals?
Rosie frowned at me, then pointed at the burger with an annoyed expression. I understood that she was vegan, so she was annoyed to see me eat meat, but her reaction was too much. After a while, the manager came to our table. I was expecting to be kicked out, but he just smiled gently and offered his hand to Rosamund. It turned out he recognized my famous girlfriend and offered her $500 to review McDonald's new dish. To our surprise, he gave Rosamund a small box with the McDonald's logo.
This is a special combo only available at McDonald's. I hope you will consider this offer. They're all vegan,
he said, winking. Rosamund looked at the box, then back at the manager incredulously. The manager nodded affirmatively. So Rosamund took the box from the manager and said she would consider the offer. That night, my girlfriend live-streamed about a McDonald's food box instead of the usual high-fiber dishes. She gobbled everything in the box, and after every bite was a compliment about McDonald's food. But just as the live stream ended, she immediately ran to the bathroom and threw up everything.
There's no way that was vegan.
She grimaced and looked so annoyed. To be honest, I thought she was merely acting. But what surprised me more was that she asked me to go to McDonald's. Had she really changed her mind? When I entered the restaurant, I couldn't believe my eyes. Rosamund was sitting in front of a large order of fries, chicken, burgers, and soda. And she was devouring all of them like crazy.
Rosie, are you okay?
I sat down in front of her.
Are these all vegan?
She continued to shove the food into her mouth as if she were starving. Even though I was a McDonald's fan, I was a bit disgusted to see my girlfriend acting like this. She was like a robot, eating a bunch of food within minutes without any intention of stopping. I mean, the amount of food on the table seemed too much for even two people.
Rosamund, are you all right?
I worried. Looking around, I recognized some other KOLs that I followed on Instagram. They were behaving as ridiculous as my girlfriend. The manager I encountered the previous day was giving the same special boxes to those customers. After this, we had a quarrel about how she was completely ignoring me and only paying attention to the food. But Rosamund just didn't care about me, and she didn't post anything on Instagram either. After 3 days, I'd had enough, so I came to her house to find her. Gosh, the floor was covered in paper boxes and cups, some with leftovers, and they were all from McDonald's. Sitting on the sofa, my beautiful Rosamund was no longer herself. She looked literally like a human balloon. Her face was full of grease and oil. She could barely move with her limp legs, and her hands kept shoving food into her mouth.
Rose! Rose!
I was freaked out and worried. I tried to stop her, but she just kept ignoring me. She went totally crazy for the food. Listen to me. She was just busy with her stuffing career. Finally, I had to call 911. Rosamund was taken to the hospital. At the same time, the food was taken for examination. It turned out that in those special boxes, there was a sort of strongly addictive chemical that forced people into stuffing themselves and making their bodies bloat up. The evil manager, who was now wanted by the police, ran away with the money. And my Rosamund, I don't think she'll ever recover her mental health.
McDonald's! McDonald's! I want McDonald's! Give me McDonald's! Give me McDonald's!
My brother saw a ghost as a kid. 10 years later, I realized what he actually saw. So I was about 8 years old. My little brother was about 5. We lived in a fairly sparsely populated area since our dad worked construction out of town back then. It was often just 3 of us at the house for weeks. One summer morning, I went to my brother's room to wake him up for breakfast. That summer was quite hot, so everyone was drenched in sweat. But my brother was still covered with a blanket. Pulling off the blanket, I saw my brother's back was wet. His face was white and sweaty. When I asked him why he was covered in blankets in the middle of summer, he turned grumpy and said, "It's a secret. I can't tell you." To my surprise, I went down to the house to ask my mother, and she said that this situation has lasted for nearly a week now. That night, a hailstorm appeared out of nowhere. Since we were both excited, Mum let us stay up later than usual. It was well past our bedtime when our mum woke up off the couch to put us to bed. My brother and Mum both had a habit of waking up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. I only knew this because I was always a light sleeper, and they just couldn't help flushing with the door wide open. This night, however, my brother stopped on his way to his room and came back towards the bathroom. I'm going to try to pee before I go to bed. The past few nights, I've been too afraid to walk to the bathroom. After a while of asking what scared my brother so much, he finally told me to bend down, then whispered in my ear, "Our house is haunted." Ignoring my cowardly expression, he continued, "That night, I thought it was Dad, so I approached him, but it was a mistake. There was a ghost with wild white eyes and was always dressed in orange. He said he won't harm you and Mum if I promise not to tell anyone. But I broke my promise." I was terrified by it. The fear of seeing a ghost like that at the end of the hallway or through the windows is the reason I started running from the stairs to my bedroom at night. After the summer vacation ended, my brother didn't mention it anymore, and I forgot about it too. Years later, when I was about 18, my mum and I had a conversation while we were on the run. We were sharing stories about Max's tendency towards destroying my shoes and other unruly behaviors when my mum blurted out, "Do you remember that time I opened the front door for the cops and Max ran inside to the kitchen and started tearing open that big bag of dog food we had?" This really caught me by surprise because in all the years I lived in that house, we never once called the cops. I asked her what she was talking about and she looked equally surprised, as if she had just revealed something by accident. "Oh, that's right. I never told you because you were too young at the time." And this is what my mother told me. On the day of the hailstorm when I was 8, my house was broken into by a stranger. That night, she got up at 3 a.m. to go to the toilet. As soon as she came out of the room, my mother suddenly heard a noise in the kitchen. She looked down from the stairs and saw a dim shadow. Mum was extremely scared but still tried to keep her eyes open. Suddenly there was a flash of thunder, lightning through the window, allowed her to see the face of that person. And at the same time, he was startled and looked up the stairs, his eyes meeting hers. Those wild eyes haunted my mum for many years. My mother quickly grabbed the phone and carried my little brother into my room, locked the door, then immediately dialed 911. She couldn't remember all the details she gave them, A tall white man wearing a faded orange suit, something like that. Police said my mother's description matched the description of a man they were looking for in the area. It turns out he had escaped from jail on a murder charge. Now, I know it sounds so obvious hearing those two stories back to back, but it wasn't until last night that I pieced everything together. Both my mother and I, we never knew that my brother had unknowingly warned us about a murderer who spent multiple nights casing our home. What my brother saw was not a ghost or an imaginary figure, but a murderer that stayed in our house for no one knows how long. And since my brother broke his promise, he actually could kill us at any time. Maybe that night, he did plan it. Maybe that sound my mom heard from the kitchen is that he was finding a knife to kill all of us.